One, the tale kicks off with a little girl named Rui playing on a swing. She asks her paralyzed father why the teacher questioned his absence at the school meeting. To protect his pride, she proudly told them her dad was once a legendary god of war. But since those battle injuries left him paralyzed, she faces constant bullying. Even her mother suffers from nasty rumors, leaving the poor girl completely helpless. She often catches her mother crying in secret, wishing for just one thing. She prays for Lynn to wake up soon, unaware that he actually hears her tears. Suddenly, a bratty boy her age steps up to mock her weeping face. He laughs, shouting that she is crying like a baby again. Then he spits out a nasty rumor about her mother, using a crippled man. Hearing those horrible words, Rui snaps instantly and leaps off her swing. She charges right at the bully, Zayu, screaming at him to shut his mouth. She warns him he will regret insulting her parents, but Zayu is much bigger. He shoves her down hard, and her head slams brutally against the metal swing. The cruel boy just laughs at her pain, even spitting on her face. Rui clutches the grass, trembling with absolute fury as he keeps mocking her. He calls her a worthless little animal, and that is her breaking point. She lunges forward and bites his hand. Luckily for him, his parents are nearby. Seeing her son in pain, the mother rushes over and kicks Rui away. She screams that the girl is nothing but a wild, uneducated little brat. Rui glares up at this horrible woman, who is acting worse than her kid. The woman grabs Rui, ignoring her screams as she drags her back to Zayu. She throws her to the dirt, demanding she kneel and apologize to her son. Meanwhile, sitting in his wheelchair, Lynn feels his inner energy begin to boil. Pure rage and a powerful protective instinct surge through his veins as he watches. Rui stubbornly refuses to apologize to the boy who just insulted her father. Why should she bow down? That is when the bully's father steps in. He violently grabs the girl by her ponytail, trying to force her down. She still resists, so the vicious mother slaps her across the face with contempt. The woman sneers, asking if she is still going to be stubborn. Facing two cruel adults, young Rui absolutely refuses to bow her head. Enraged, the father raises his heavy hand, shouting that he will teach her. But right then, and you'll love this, the paralyzed father catches his hand. Lynn locks his grip tightly, demanding to know who gave him permission to touch his daughter. On this day, the former god of war finally awakens his dormant power. He declares that anyone who dares lay a hand on his daughter will lose their head. The bully's father was acting tough before, but now his life hangs by a thread. From this second on, Lynn will never allow anyone to humiliate his family again. He slams the man into the pavement as Zayu and his mother watch in horror. The mother stands frozen, completely terrified by this sudden display of raw power. Desperate to save her husband, she charges at Lynn, clawing at his chest. She screams at him to let go, even threatening to call the police on him. Lynn doesn't even let her finish. A brutal slap sends her flying. She crashes straight into the grass as Lynn coldly warns her. How dare she touch his beloved daughter, she will pay. He ordered them to never forget this day, since he was sparing their lives, even after. They targeted his daughter. His mind drifted back to memories of his past. Battles fighting entirely alone against countless soldiers, one last warrior. Stood breathing heavily, his body battered and covered in deep cuts. Suddenly a voice called out in praise, saying he could single-handedly inspire an army of 10,000. Lynn snapped his gaze toward the sound just as more warriors descended before him, declaring they would not let him win so easily. One soldier stepped forward, admitting Lynn was indeed worthy of his title, but insisted he would fall today at the hands of the 7 sons of the Western Alliance. Hearing their challenge, Lynn smirked, raising his spear with unwavering resolve. He roared that he had fought for 6 long years and had absolutely no reason to fear them. The Western Alliance leader rushed in, striking with deadly intent as warriors surrounded Lynn, their weapons flashing to ensure he had zero chance of survival. but Lynn slipped past the blades like a shadow, though a spear handle still struck his body, yet he remained unshaken, launching a swift counter as he hurled one of the Alliance members aside with the sheer power of his spear. Behind him, the leader closed in with raised weapon, thinking this was the final blow, but Lynn acted with lightning speed, his spear pierced straight through the enemy's chest, crimson blood spilling from his mouth. As disbelief filled the man's eyes, Lynn coldly noted he was far too weak. Even an army of 10,000 could never push him back a single step. The 3 remaining fighters charged. From just a meter away, Lynn unleashed a flurry of cuts, telling them to blame their own weakness for this defeat. His spear moved with such blinding precision that the warriors could not even react. Only at the very end did they realize there was absolutely nothing they could do to stop his crushing blows. When the dust settled, Lynn stood alone once more on the battlefield, believing that bringing order here would finally bring peace back home, but this relentless fighting had taken a massive toll on him. His body was battered, his eyes heavy with exhaustion, but he could not fall. Not when his daughter still needed that vital bone marrow transplant. Then, a voice pulled him back. Little Ray was crying, clinging to his legs and calling out. Pure joy filled Lynn's heart as he knelt to hold his daughter close. She stared at him, barely believing this heroic man was actually her father. Lynn vowed to completely destroy the Zyro family if they did not bow 100 times. The terrified family quickly complied, bowing and begging for forgiveness with each breath. Ray sobbed, crying that everyone around them hated her father, but Lynn promised her that he would never let anyone harm their family again. She kept weeping, heartbroken because nobody believed her when she said her father was a real hero. He listened quietly, but noticed her body still had not recovered. Lynn felt a pang of worry, knowing he had to stay strong. For her sake, recognizing his struggle, the little girl asked him to set her down. He gently complied, placing her on the ground with a soft reassurance. Stroking her head, he told her they should go home, but Ray revealed a harsh truth, saying their grandmother had kicked them out and banned them from returning. Shin had to meet with her uncle's son. Lynn frowned, something felt wrong here. Rai leaned in close, whispering for him to pretend to be asleep. Again. He smiled inside. Clever girl. Slipping back into the wheelchair, he was ready. Rai played her part perfectly. Right on cue, she shrieked out that her father was broken because the brutal Gaskow family had assaulted him. Turning to the terrified couple, she screamed they would face her uncle next. That would be their end. Quickly, she wheeled her father toward the house, while Shiai's parents shook with fear, dreading the massive payout they would owe. Finally, they reached the front door. A cold, blonde woman stood there. Scowling with pure disgust, she immediately insulted young Rai, reminding the girl that she had strictly forbidden bringing Lynn back without her permission. Rai shrank back, terrified. She still gathered her courage to look her grandmother in the eye. They were simply exhausted, but she did not care. She snapped at her to shut up. Pointing at Lynn, she screamed that Rai must never call him father, but the little girl stood firm, shouting that he would always be her dad. Suddenly, a strange voice cut through. A man was saying it would be an honor to marry Shin. The stranger stepped outside. Lynn's expression darkened as Rai whispered that this was the wealthy man her mother had discussed when speaking to her uncle. His beautiful wife Shin followed him out, looking deeply distressed. She quietly told him she needed time to think. Sun agreed to give her that space, fully confident he would eventually win her heart. Turning around, he spotted the paralyzed man and the little girl waiting in the yard. He instantly realized who the child was. Smiling, Sun casually strolled over, pinching her cheeks while calling her cute. Shin's mother barked at her to walk Sun out, but his proud wife flatly refused. Rai's grandmother rushed ahead to butter him up, leaving her daughter visibly miserable. Watching this, Rai whispered to her father that this creep was trying to steal Shin away. Just then, her mother walked over to them, her expression softening as she gently took Rai's small hands. Shin whispered a soft thank you to Rai for taking such good care of her father today. The little girl burst into tears, begging her to promise she would not find a new dad. Shin held her tight, swearing that would never happen. Wiping Rai's tears, she noticed a fresh bruise on her cheek. Rai quickly lied to protect her mother. Once home, Rai went to her room, leaving her parents alone. Shin sat on the edge of the bed, staring closely at Lynn, desperately searching for any way out. Lynn wondered if his wife already knew he was awake. She softly whispered that she knew he could not hear her, but she had to confess something. Her words made him freeze, forcing himself to play dead. Crying quietly, Shin gently stroked his hair, whispering that their daughter was only safe because of his sacrifice. She admitted she desperately wanted their little girl to grow up safe and happy. Through heavy tears, she confessed she would marry Sun if it guaranteed Rai a protected life. It was a brutal choice, but telling him helped. Honest with the man she loved most, standing up, she whispered a quiet apology to her seemingly sleeping husband, then turned away. Inside, Lynn was thinking about how much his wife had endured while he lay comatose. Suddenly, a sharp knock cut through the quiet room. He realized he was not alone. Jang, his wife's younger sister, walked right out of the bathroom. She casually mentioned that Shin was getting married. Seeing her here was a shock, but he did not react. Outwardly, inside, he was absolute steel. Jang walked over, tossed her towel aside, and grabbed his chin, mockingly sighing that a handsome face was going to waste. Right then, her phone rang, drawing her over to the bed. She picked up, greeting her wealthy future brother-in-law with her bare feet kicking right in front of Lynn. The sheer disrespect was wild, but he stayed still, focusing on the call. Sun asked if Shin accepted his gifts. Jang scoffed no, but promised that sooner or later her sister would belong to him. Sun sounded doubtful, so he offered to buy her whatever she wanted, just what she was waiting for. She immediately demanded a designer bag and shoes. Sun promised her the world on one condition: she help him. Jang instantly agreed, heading straight to Shin's closet, saying she would do absolutely anything. Throwing on a blouse, she smirked at her future brother-in-law, telling him to burn all Shin's old clothes. Then she swept out. Lynn was left entirely alone in the center of the room, processing every single disgusting detail. It was sickening. Shin was forcing herself to marry this trash just to protect little Ray. Outside, the open window curtains swayed in the breeze. Suddenly, a shadow flickered, and a young girl stood there. She bowed, whispering her relief that he was finally awake. Lynn immediately recognized her as Chin, asking why she was not guarding the border, still bowing with deep respect. Chin quietly said her master's life mattered far more than any border. Besides, after their last war, no enemy dared to cross that line anyway. Lynn listened to his loyal subordinate, then softly asked for any other updates. Chin's eyes darkened with heavy sadness. For the past 2 years, she revealed, vultures had circled him, desperately trying to take his wife away. Without his direct order, however, she could not touch a hair on their heads. But now she pleaded for permission to wipe every single villain out. Hearing this, Lynn's blood boiled. His hands clenched hard in the dark. He realized that while he slept, these pests had crawled way too close. But first, son, Lynn ordered Chin to dig up everything on that man. She accepted the command instantly, ready to unleash the shadows. She promised to start immediately and bring back absolute proof. Without a sound, the ghost-like shadow slipped back through the window, vanishing into the night. Left alone once more, Lynn did not have to wait long in the quiet. The door creaked open and little Ray burst in, her tiny face glowing with pure joy. She eagerly told her mom that in fairy tales the prince kissed the sleeping beauty, and she woke up. Smiling, the girl insisted that if her mom kissed Daddy, he would wake up too. Shin was speechless, but looking at her daughter's wide, hopeful eyes, she actually paused to consider it. Leaning down, she slowly Shin tried explaining it was just a fairy tale. but little Rai knew the truth. Her father was fully awake. She wanted her mother to find out right now, this exact way. So she begged, kiss him. Shin, though doubtful, could not refuse her daughter. Slowly she approached her husband. He lay there, completely motionless. Shin studied his face closely. It had been so long since she was this near. She leaned down, kissing him. She poured every ounce of love, praying for a miracle. Rai peeked through her fingers. Surely he would wake up now. She waited, breathless. Any second his eyes would open, making her mother cry with joy, but absolutely nothing happened. Lynn remained still. Shin slowly turned back, her face falling. Daddy is not waking up, she whispered. Fairy tales are not real. Rai was crushed. Why would he not just open his eyes and show her mother? Shin took her small hand. In a trembling voice, she made a quiet promise. She would find a new father to protect them. Hearing this, Rai was furious. Liar, she screamed, reminding her mother of the promise that no one replaces Lynn. Rai sobbed uncontrollably, grabbing her father's limp hand. Desperate, she tried to pull him up, begging him to wake up. Shin turned away, weeping silently. He had to hear her. Rai begged him to tell her mother the truth. Inside, Lynn was tearing apart. It was torture to lie there and do nothing. His heart shattered. I am so sorry, he thought, silently begging his daughter's forgiveness. But he had to play dead. Revealing himself now would ruin everything. Still, Rai received no response. Her cries grew louder. You are a liar too, she screamed. Shin had no choice. She dragged her sobbing child out of the quiet room. Do not yell at your father, Shin pleaded, but Rai refused to believe it. Her daddy would never let another man replace him. Soon, the day ended. Night fell over the quiet house, leaving only a single lamp burning in the dark. Eventually, Rai cried herself to sleep. Tears stained her cheeks as she drifted off. Shin sat in absolute silence beside her, the crushing weight of guilt in her chest. Suddenly, the bedroom door creaked open. Jang was standing right there in the doorway. She reminded Shin about the banquet. Why are you still sitting at home? Shin did not answer. Impatient, Jang grabbed her sister's hand to pull her up. They had to leave right now. Once Shin married Sun, everything would change. Rai would have everything she ever wanted. Shin closed her eyes. All she wanted was for her daughter to stop crying. Heavily, she agreed to go. Back in the bedroom, Lynn sat up as Chin slipped inside the open window. She carried a sealed envelope. Master, she said, I have finished gathering the files. She had collected every piece of information regarding Sun and his dirty dealings. Chin handed it over. She reminded him that today was Jinsang's birthday. Sun was hosting a banquet at the Jiangzhou Hotel. Shin would arrive soon. Lin took the files. Thanking his loyal subordinate, he carefully tore them open. He scans the files, his face hardening as he realizes how vile they are. Their methods were sickening. Rising from his wheelchair, Lin gave the final order. Chin, get ready. They were going to crash this birthday party together. At the Grand Hotel, the two sisters arrived right on schedule, greeted warmly. The receptionist confirmed their reservation under Sun. A private room was already prepared. For them, stepping inside, Jang was instantly blown away by the lavish decorations. She points excitedly at the massive birthday arch, but Shin remains deeply uneasy. A nearby man adjusts his glasses. He cannot believe his father booked this entire place. Jang immediately glides over to her future brother-in-law, laughing right along with him. Footsteps echo in the hallway. A little girl approaches. She is carrying a box with a stunning ring inside. Jang's eyes instantly sparkle at the sight of the heavy golden band. Massive diamond. Right then, Sun drops to one knee. He presents the ring, asking Shin to marry him in front of everyone. The staff whisper. They are totally blown away by his family's insane wealth. Sun promises to take care of her and her family, staring with intense expectation. But this massive decision completely tears her apart. Her soul feels split. She stays silent. Nearby, Lin and Chin watch everything closely from their seats near the piano. Chin quietly asks if she should step in and remove this arrogant guy. But Lin tells her to wait. his worry grows as he watches his wife. Finally, Shin pulls her hand back from Sun, saying this proposal is way too sudden. She admits she is deeply worried about who will take care of Lynn. Jang panics, urging her sister to accept. Hearing this hesitation, Sun totally loses his patience. He stands up, angrily reproaching her for being completely ungrateful. Booking an entire hotel, he even promised to look after her young daughter. Jang joins in, pressuring her sister to marry this wealthy, powerful man. But Shin's anger flares. How dare he talk down to her? She refuses. Furious at the rejection, Sun grabs her arm. Shin tries to pull away. He threatens her, warning that if she disobeys, her family will cease to exist. Whispering quietly, he tells her she must obey to keep her daughter safe. Then he arrogantly announces that today is going to be her wedding day. Guests cheer his power, but Lynn has seen enough. It is go time. Lynn tells Chin that she knows what to do. Within a blink, she vanishes. As Sun approaches Shin, Chin grabs his hand, forcing him to face her. Furious, she orders him to stop. His guards immediately rush to his aid. With a confident smile, Sun waves them back, ordering everyone to leave. The arrogant man actually thinks Chin stopped him because she is jealous of Shin. Smirking, he strokes her cheek, mockingly asking if she also wants some love. His guards laugh, calling Sun incredibly talented, but Chin has hit her limit. Instantly, she strikes his face so hard that his glasses completely shatter. Sun freezes, utterly stunned, clutching his cheek in complete disbelief. Then his rage erupts. He orders his guards to finish her off immediately. The men charge at her, yelling that she has absolutely no idea what she did. Yet their confidence vanishes the moment Chin calmly raises her hand. With just a slight movement, she sends the first attacker flying. Without breaking a sweat, she effortlessly neutralizes 3 more guards. The remaining guards stare at their fallen comrades, unable to understand what happened. Sun is completely furious. He roars that he is the heir here. Chin looks at him with cold disdain, her gaze absolutely freezing. She notes that rich heirs should learn to behave far more modestly. At that moment, a nearby woman mutters she is curious about their identities. Chin was indeed a bold girl. She calmly wishes the woman a happy birthday, shocking everyone. Suddenly, a gorgeous melody fills the hotel lobby. A voice shouts for everyone to look at the stage. They turn. They freeze in shock. A handsome man sits at the piano, playing a breathtaking tune. Jang cannot take her eyes off him, gushing. But Chin recognizes him instantly. It is her husband, Lynn. She is certain the man on stage is her master. The other woman is completely confused. Why would she call him that? Meanwhile, Sun is seething, furious that someone is playing in the hotel he supposedly owns. He screams for the manager. The staff rushes over and the manager orders security to handle this. In seconds, a heavy squad arrives. Sun sneers, fully confident Chin will finally pay for hitting him earlier. He points at her, barking the order to throw her out, but instead of obeying him, the guards turn on Sun himself. They grab him and drag him away. He thrashes, screaming and yelling that he is Sun. The manager gives him a cold smile, explaining there has been no mistake. The entire hotel was rented by Lynn. At first, Sun tries to keep his arrogance, but as reality hits, panic sets in. The manager apologizes to Chin for the trouble, ordering his men to kick Sun and his thugs out. They are thrown out of the hall despite his loud protests. The manager then declares the entire Sun family banned from the premises forever. Talk about instant karma. With the trash cleared, everyone looks back at the piano. Chin can only stare, her mind a chaotic storm. Is that really her husband? Up there, Jang, totally starstruck by the rich, gorgeous guy, excitedly begs her sister to introduce them, but Chin plays dumb, claiming she has no idea who he is, keeping the truth hidden. The guests are spellbound by Lynn's incredible song. Suddenly, massive explosions boom from outside. Everyone rushes to the windows as someone yells to look at the sky. They look up and gasp. the dark night sky is completely ablaze with beautiful fireworks, spelling out a glowing birthday message just for Chin. She stands frozen, absolutely breathless at such an incredibly grand, romantic gesture. Hearing Lynn's name spoken with such high praise sends shivers down her spine. A desperate urge takes over. She has to see him face to face. She needs to confirm if that really is her husband. Chin turns sharply and sprints toward the stage, but her younger sister grabs her arm. Chin tears herself free, running forward with absolute certainty that Lynn is waiting for her, but when she finally gets there, the stage is completely empty. The piano sits silent. Her heart sinks into her chest. Why did he leave? Her sister catches up, calmly mentioning Lynn already went home. Chin wants to believe it. If he is there, she needs to get back immediately. In reality, Lynn left long ago and is already home. Before his wife even steps inside, he is already issuing cold orders to his assistant. He wants all information on the giant family immediately. She bows and apologizes for speaking out, but notes that his awakening must remain a secret. She can handle things personally. Our main character just smiles and asks if she is. He was seriously worried about the fallout if anyone discovered he was awake. Standing near the window, Chin avoided answering. Suddenly, she spotted Shin entering the house. She bowed, bid her master goodbye, and promised she would execute his orders. Lin changed back into his old clothes, determined to keep his recovery a secret a little longer. He hated hiding this from his wife, but there was no choice. As Shin entered, she ignored her mother's questions about the birthday party. Behind her, the older woman shouted that nothing had changed and that useless cripple was still there. Jang followed smugly, boasting to their mother that Shin had been highly successful tonight. She even showed off a recording of the man who rented the entire Jiangzhou hotel, proudly bragging that this rich man named Lin had done it all for Shin. Their mother scoffed that since Shin had found a wealthier man, she no longer needed to marry Sun, but Shin ignored them and opened the door to her room. With tears in her eyes, she softly called out to Lin, hoping he would wake up. Her heart broke seeing him motionless in his wheelchair. She was sure she saw him at the hotel, but now all her confidence crumbled. Crying, she remembered how 5 years ago her family had forced her to marry Sun, a man she utterly despised. She had been overjoyed when her grandfather introduced her to Lin instead. That very night they were married, and soon after, baby Ray was born, a ray of hope in their harsh world. But then little Ray fell ill, needing a bone marrow transplant. Lin saved her, sacrificing his own health in the process. Tears streamed down Shin's face as she remembered it all. Her daughter was saved, but her husband was left completely broken. Kneeling in front of him, she begged him to come back to her, saying she simply couldn't live like this anymore. Lin looked at his wife, his heart aching with sheer pain. Silently, he promised she wouldn't have to wait much longer. Meanwhile, Jang watched coldly, whispering she couldn't understand what her sister saw in this vegetable who depended on everyone. Then she remembered that rich man named Lin. Smirking, she stepped inside and tried to lure Shin out, suggesting a bar trip. Shin refused, saying she needed to sleep since she had to take Ray to school tomorrow. They could go out some other time, but persistent Jang kept insisting that they needed to relax. See, right after the incident, Sun had called Jang, demanding she fulfill her part of their dirty deal. At first, she refused, but he promised that he could make this mysterious Mr. Lin her husband. Believing his lie, Jang agreed to bring her sister to the bar tonight. Now she hugged Shin, squealing loudly that she was the best sister ever, while secretly Shin, completely exhausted, finally gave in and went to fix her makeup. Unaware of her sister's malicious motives, Shin headed for the exit, while Jang looked at Lin with an evil smirk. Then she leaned toward Lin and whispered that after today, his wife would finally get divorced. After that, she left. Suddenly, Lin was completely alone in the room when Chin slipped through the bedroom window. She reported that she had uncovered all the latest dirty business of the Jiang family, the family of Lynn's wife. Chin explained that there was a massive financial crisis in their family. The rival company promised to elevate Chin's family to the absolute top if she married their son. Hearing this, Lynn frowned, noting that this so-called son was incredibly calculating. Soon they will see if Sun is faster than Lynn's lethal blade. Moments later, the hero spotted his wife's car leaving the house and ordered Chen to track Chin's movements. Meanwhile, over at the club, Sun sat waiting and the staff noticed how incredibly cheerful he seemed. They refilled his glass and asked about the reason behind his great mood. Sun laughed loudly, boasting of excellent news. As everyone around offered their congratulations, just then, the two sisters entered the crowded lounge. Chin nervously asked her sister if they were really the right spot. Nearby men immediately turned, mesmerized by their striking beauty. Sun grinned with pure delight and quickly walked over to greet them. Right then, Chin coldly stated she had no interest in seeing him. She demanded answers. Her younger sister, Zhang, stepped in, desperately trying to keep the peace. And talk about betrayal, that was when Chin realized her own sister set her up. Sun tried to smooth things over, bowing deeply and admitting he had acted way too impulsively. He offered a polite apology, begging for a quick chance to talk. Lynn's wife realized her struggling family still desperately needed Sun's business backing. She simply could not afford to burn this bridge. Sun quickly promised it would never happen again. In his mind, though, he was waiting to finally drag her into his bed, walking over to the bar counter. He grabbed a fresh glass, poured some wine, and waited for her to look away. Before quickly slipping a spiked pill inside, the villain then turned back and offered the glass to Chin as a peace offering, but she immediately refused, stating she had to drive. Hearing this, her sister Zhang pushed back, insisting she take just a sip to prove she actually forgave him. Zhang grabbed her arm, assuring her a tiny taste would do absolutely no harm. Reluctantly, Chin took the glass and downed the entire drink. Zhang grinned proudly, exclaiming that Sun must finally believe in her sister's sincerity now. The ecstatic predator could hardly wait to claim his helpless prize. Minutes afterward, the hero's wife felt dizzy and weakly warned her sister that they had to leave, but the arrogant Sun stepped in, blocking her path. Before she could run, he swept her up. She tried to fight back. Even in a crowded room, onlookers simply smirked. To make matters worse, her own sister watched everything happen and did absolutely nothing to save her. Suddenly, Chen called Lynn. His wife had just been taken. The furious hero ordered his man to locate her coordinates instantly. Within seconds, the tracker confirmed she was at the Grand Milky Way Hotel. Lynn instructed Chen to scout ahead while he prepared to deliver justice himself. Meanwhile, Sun dragged the nearly unconscious girl to the nearby luxury suite. Dazed and terrified, Chin tried to make sense of her blurry surroundings. She weakly demanded to know his plans, desperate to escape his grasp. She begged to go home, but Sun ignored her. He gaslighted her completely. He claimed she was just drunk and knew exactly why they came here. Roughly grabbing her face, Sun sneered that they would be sharing a bed tonight. But Chin gathered her remaining strength. She violently shoved the monster back. A twisted grin spreads across Sun's face as he admits he never expected her to fight back. He starts whispering disgusting, perverted things, trying to break her spirit. Sun grabs her hand tightly, mocking her that escape is completely impossible with so many of his men around. Sickened by his touch, Chin desperately tries to fight him. She knows she must resist him with every single ounce of strength she has left. Seizing her chance, she sinks her teeth right into his ear. Infuriated, he brutally yanks her by the hair, shouting that she will pay a terrible price. Sun wraps his hands around her neck, choking her for refusing to marry him. As the air leaves her lungs, Chin can only desperately pray for her husband. Suddenly, the door flies open, and honestly, we all know Sun is in deep, deep trouble. Sun does not recognize him, screaming that he barged into the wrong room. Lynn stands there like an absolute demon, radiating a silent, terrifying pressure that freezes the entire room. He calmly warns Sun that touching her again means sending his family to the grave. Chin looks up in total disbelief, seeing her husband right there. Before anyone can react, a devastating punch from Lynn sends Sun crashing to the floor. Sun stares in absolute shock, wondering how a guy in a wheelchair even got here. Staying on the ground, he quickly decides it is best to play nice. Now, along with a nasty cut on his cheek, he is sporting a rapidly swelling black eye. He immediately accuses the couple of plotting against him, completely delusional. This ridiculous claim only makes Lynn angrier, while Sun struggles to stand on shaky legs. He desperately bluffs, attempting to assure everyone in the room that he will be rescued soon. He lets his fragile ego take over, sneering that Lynn is beneath him. He even threatens to brutally harm Lynn's wife and daughter if anyone dares to touch him. Lynn has heard enough of this garbage and shuts him down. Lynn decides that this time he will only give him a warning. But the moment his back is turned, Sun pulls out his phone to call for help. He arrogantly promises to show Lynn which one of them is the real nobody. But Lynn immediately intercepts him, catching his hand in a tight vice grip. Lynn coldly asks if this is the hand he used to touch Chin, slowly twisting his wrist. Sun screams in pain, warning that his family will not let this slide. In response, Lynn just strikes him again, dropping him to his knees. He makes it crystal clear that he does not care about his powerful family connections. Lynn walks away, warning that next time there will be absolutely no mercy. Meanwhile, Chin is quickly losing consciousness, her heavy eyelids growing heavier with every passing second. Her husband rushes over and wraps his warm jacket around her shivering shoulders. He whispers softly, promising her that he is here now and she is safe. But even now, she weakly warns him that he could end up in prison for murder. Hearing her panic, Sun starts to gloat, suddenly finding his confidence again. He starts mocking Lynn, but the hero turns back with chilling silence. Lynn mutters that Sun is not even a human being, shoving him to the floor. Sun instantly begs for mercy, but Lynn says he is not done with him. He still has some use for this trash, so he finally lifts his boot. Trembling from head to toe, Sun whimpers and asks what the hero actually wants. Lynn glares at the coward who dragged his wife to this hotel room. He quietly tells Sun that he is about to receive a real lesson. He tries to back away, but Lynn brings his heel down hard on the man's groin. The guy screams in absolute agony. With his job finished, the master decided to leave. He leaves Sun twitching in the dirt. Turning back, he scoops up his unconscious wife. Her eyes slowly flutter open. She looks up, realizing Lynn is the one holding her. Relief washes over her, but a sudden panic hits. Shin fears this is all just a dream. Her husband holds her close, whispering that this is real and apologizing for being late. He kisses her gently, telling Shin he is taking her home to see a doctor. Shin smiles through her tears. He is taking his wife home to see a doctor. In just 2 short years, everyone forgot about the legend, but now, watch closely. But now he is back, kicking off his return by tearing Sun's family apart. Later that night, Lynn quietly steps into the room. His little girl is still asleep. He gently sits on the edge of the mattress. She stirs, feeling a warm hand. Rui opens her eyes. Recognizing her father, she throws her arms around him, crying. She sobs, admitting how terrified she was that she would never see him again. Rui worries about his health, but he reassures her that he is just tired. It is time for bed, he says, promising her mother will return very soon. He turns to leave the bedroom, but the little girl quickly grabs his hand. Rui looks deeply upset, terrified he might disappear in the night like before. She asks if he is lying again. He looks at his sweet, worried daughter. He whispers that plans have changed. Now they have a very important secret. She must not tell anyone he can walk. Rui promises to keep the secret. Not even her mother can know. Together, father and daughter seal the promise. Meanwhile, at the hospital, a doctor is carefully reviewing some critical test results. Entering Sun's recovery room, she breaks the grim news that surgery is his only option. But the risks to his life are dangerously high. The young heir feels doomed. He thinks his days are numbered, but the doctor offers a brutal alternative. They have to amputate. The horrific news makes him scream through the corridors. Sun vows to make Lynn pay. Meanwhile, Shin is resting quietly in bed. Her daughter sits nearby, patiently waiting for her mother to open her eyes. Shin wakes up, looking around the room. She hears Rui's sweet, giggling voice. Her mind is still foggy. The little girl laughs, calling her a sleepyhead. Memories of last night suddenly rush back. Shin instantly panics, searching for her husband. She turns, only to see him sitting in his wheelchair, just like always. Tears stream down her face. She truly believes that rescue was just a dream. She thinks some stranger saved her. Rui gently cups her mother's weeping face. The girl begs her not to cry, promising that Daddy will always protect them. Suddenly, Shin's mother storms into the room, demanding immediate answers. She wants to know who drugged her daughter with that dangerous pill. Shin holds her daughter tight, explaining that Sun slipped something into her wine. Thankfully, a mysterious savior stepped in. Her mother fumed, ready to hunt them down. She vows to punish whoever dared touch her daughter, then stops dead. She asks if she is really accusing Sun. The wife is absolutely certain. She confirms the villain's guilt, but her sister quickly steps in to object. She claims it is all a misunderstanding, arguing that accusing him is useless. After all, Shin is supposed to marry the man. Shin wants to scream. She wanted to protect her sister, since she was the one who brought her to that bar. No one could know. Just then her mother chimes in, claiming Shin is surely mistaken. This makes Rui snap, and she yells at her grandmother that her mother never lies. The bitter old woman instantly raises a fist, threatening the little girl to shut up. She warns her to stay silent when adults speak. Meanwhile, Lynn watches in silence. He is absolutely furious, but he cannot risk exposing his true identity just yet. Right then, the wife's phone rings, sending a sudden wave of dread through her heart. It is Shin calling, and she has no idea what to do. She answers anyway. Shin coldly demands she meet him at his house, or the entire giant family pays. They will vanish. The call ends, and her mother begs her to submit. She must take the blame and apologize to save them. The poor wife is devastated. She hates their spineless attitude, but is forced to agree. Rui absolutely hates this choice. Seeing her mother forced to apologize to a disgusting bully feels completely unfair to her. Later on, Lynn and Rui finally find themselves alone. The girl looks up at him. She asks her father to tell her mother that everything is going to be fine. Lynn asks his daughter to push his wheelchair to the park to handle those thugs. He will teach them a lesson so Grandma stops scolding her. Rui is absolutely thrilled. However, Lynn softly reminds her that this must stay a secret between the two of them. Meanwhile, Shin's father looks at his injured son. Shin's mother is crying in panic. She cannot believe anyone would dare lay a hand on her precious, only son. Her husband snaps, telling her that tears will not solve a single thing right now. He blames his wife for completely spoiling the boy, turning Shin into absolute trash. Shin is ruining their proud family reputation all over some random woman. Shin desperately tries to argue that he was simply caught off guard and ambushed. His father only gets angrier, calling him an incompetent fool, but Shin's mother objects. She firmly believes her son, suspecting the giant family is plotting against them. The father walks over to the window, shaking his head at her baseless assumptions. The giant family is far too small and weak to ever pose a threat to them. He does not take them seriously, even if they have some secret backing. Still, he wants an interrogation. Shin keeps winging about his brutal beating. He insists that her husband beat him up. His father makes a dark promise. If he ever finds that man, he will personally tear him limb from limb. Suddenly, their conversation is cut short. Lynn appears inside the room. An incredibly heavy, suffocating pressure radiates from his body, freezing everyone in place. Lynn calmly asks how much trouble they must have caused to need this many guards. Shin's mother quickly cowers behind her husband, who demands to know Lynn's identity. Shin suddenly bolts up from his bed, pointing and screaming in absolute terror. He yells that this is the exact same bastard who beat him up. Seeing the intruder, the father remarks that Lynn has a lot of nerve breaking in. Lynn merely stares at them with complete disgust, completely ignoring their empty threats. These people are not even worthy of his wife's apology. Shin's father raises his hand. He orders his bodyguards to seize the arrogant brat immediately, but Lynn only smiles. He tells them their guards are already lying unconscious on the ground outside. He even offers to wait while they call for more backup. The father seethes. He vows that Lynn will never leave this mansion alive today. This was his final shot to save himself, but Lynn was only irritated. He coldly asked the man if he was truly so confident in those pathetic words. In a flash, our protagonist crossed the room, instantly appearing right behind the arrogant fool. Seconds later, Lynn delivered a brutal punch to his face, sending him crashing down. Lynn made it clear he gets away with absolutely everything. Watching this unfold, the wife completely panicked just like her husband, wanting to scream. She wanted to scream, but shut her mouth the moment Lynn glanced over. The beaten patriarch desperately struggled up, still trying to spit out his threats. He snarled that he did not care who was backing Lynn, he would eliminate them all. Too late, Lynn was already standing directly in front of his face. Lynn coldly told him he was just as pathetic as his worthless son. Shivering in fear, the son realized this monster of a man did not even seem human. Lynn unleashed a crushing, demonic pressure, making them shake with pure terror. He hoisted the old patriarch up by his throat as desperate cries filled the room. The frantic wife threw herself at Lynn's feet, begging and offering to pay anything. Realizing their massive empire would crumble without his father, the son panicked. He pleaded for their lives, desperately promising they would never bother Shin again. To Lynn, their sudden pleas for peace were just pathetic. With a cold sneer, he tossed the old man aside like trash. As the patriarch wheezed and clutched his neck, his worried wife rushed over. Lynn gave them exactly 1 day to apologize to the Yin family. If they failed, their entire lineage would vanish, and they must keep silent. Break that rule and they would vanish. The patriarch felt absolute terror. Those chilling words sent a massive wave of cold anxiety down his spine. The heavy office door clicked shut, leaving them alone in deafening silence. Clinging to his bruised pride, the patriarch refused to let some kid humiliate him. Consumed by blind rage, he immediately resolved to destroy the entire giant family. Scrambling up from the floor, he grabbed his phone and started making calls. While his wife checked the empty hallway, the patriarch prepared his revenge. But before he could utter a single command, he received devastating news. Every single major investor had pulled out, and banks froze their loans. The phone slipped from his trembling hands as his mind went blank with shock. How could an empire worth hundreds of millions crash in 1 day? Shivering in a blanket, the son whimpered, asking his father what to do. But the old man was too busy obsessing over Lynn's mysterious identity. The son was equally lost. Wasn't the giant family begging them for money? Snap, reality hits. The father suddenly ripped the blanket off his son. He roared that this company was his life's work, his everything. He ordered his son to grab the cash and go beg Shin for forgiveness. The son stared in disbelief, unable to comprehend his father's sudden turn. Enraged, the father violently shook him, screaming that if Shin did not forgive them, they were finished. Meanwhile, Shin's mother walked out, ordering her daughter to just give in. She insisted they must comply with the wealthy family or face ruin. Too exhausted to fight back, Shin quietly submitted to her mother's demands. They slowly walked toward the gate, the mother still muttering in anxiety. Shin tries to put on a gentler face, but they do not even have time to leave. Right outside the gate, the young master's son is already down on his knees. Shin's mother frantically tries to pull him up, trying to convince the young man that it was all her own daughter's fault, but Sun shoves Lee's hand away and screams that yesterday was entirely his fault, desperately begging her for forgiveness. Shin instantly suspects that this is some kind of trap. Meanwhile, the boy grabs the skirt and begs for forgiveness, swearing he will never bother her again. Feeling completely disgusted, the protagonist's wife tells him she will only forgive him if he stays far away. Hearing this, Sun cries tears of pure relief. And honestly, who can blame her? This bizarre reaction leaves Shin completely baffled. She has no idea what prompted his terror, but he is not just offering words. He presents a check for 1 million as compensation. Lee wastes absolutely no time, immediately snatching the check, while Shin only says she never wants to see him again, and Sun quickly scrambles away. Lee immediately demands to know who helped her deal with a family as powerful as the Sun's, but the girl has no answers. Mother's questions, Lee thinks it over and concludes that they must have been helped by yesterday's mysterious savior, who seems to be incredibly powerful. Meanwhile, Sun flees from the giant's family home, desperately hoping his nightmare is finally over. But his luck completely runs out when he runs straight into Lynn and his young daughter. The protagonist glares at Sun with a terrifying, icy stare. The young man quickly reports that Shin accepted his apology, trembling as he asks for further orders. Lynn calmly replies that he hopes they never cross paths again. The terrified guy is about to bolt when Lynn's voice freezes him in place. The protagonist just wants to remind him that one word to anyone, and his entire family will be utterly destroyed. Shaking with pure fear, Sun falls to his knees and promises he will keep Lynn's secret. Meanwhile, Shin's mother is busy nagging that her daughter must divorce that useless loser, insisting there are far better men out there, so there is no reason to stay with a worthless husband. She tries to emotionally manipulate the poor girl, pressuring her feelings. Talk about toxic. Just then, Ray returns home with her father, finding Shin there. Her mother is utterly shocked to see them. Ray cheerfully explains that she took her father out to sunbathe. Shin instantly pulls her little girl in for a warm hug. She praises Ray for being so smart, but the bitter grandmother only scoffs in disapproval, making a disdainful scoff in their direction. Right after that, the little girl leans over to her mother and whispers that her father dealt with those bad men, but that is their little secret. Shin stares at her daughter, shocked by those words, before laughing it off and promising to take her to school herself. Soon, Ray gets completely ready for class and checks on her father before leaving. Lynn quietly watches his sweet family, feeling truly happy to be part of their lives again, even in this crippled state. Once the girls leave, King enters the room. Lynn immediately asks her to wheel him outside because he wants to watch his daughter head off to school. A short while later, little Ray is walking with her mother, wishing her father could have come along to pick her up. Shin smiles and promises a reward for good behavior. At that moment, the snobbish Zio family is waiting at the school gate, looking incredibly smug. They blocked the path. Shin held her daughter close, ready to fight back. She demanded to know why they were there. The man pointed at his bruised forehead, blaming Lynn for the injury. He swore that this time they would not get off so easy. The wife demanded $200,000 for moral damages. She pulled young Zio close, complaining that the boy was too terrified to eat lately. He had lost weight over the last 2 days. The boy's father refused to back down. Shin quickly snapped that this was impossible, especially since Lynn was stuck in a wheelchair. The man stepped closer, yelling that she could believe him or not, but he would definitely finish off her ex. Little Ray stepped forward, shouting that they did not stop, she would call her father. Suddenly, the bully felt Lynn's terrifying aura. No way. Terrified of another beating, he made a quick decision. He grabbed his family and bolted. Run. His wife had no idea why they were running, especially after he had promised to handle the disabled guy, but the husband had a really bad feeling. Lynn quietly noted he would handle them another time. Shin leaned down. She had to go. She explained the situation to her daughter. Leave quickly. Soon after, Principal Yang approached them right near the school gate. Stating that he needed to speak with Shin, she had absolutely no idea why. Yang suggested they head up to his office to discuss everything in private. Shin immediately worried that this meeting had something to do with her daughter. Once they arrived in the office, Yang coldly informed her of the news. Ray's academic contract was expiring this year, and they needed to discuss next year. Shin was stunned, dead wrong. This made no sense after they had a clear deal. For 2 full years, only 6 months had passed, but the director just shrugged, muttering excuses about limited student seats and a complete lack of reservations. Shin angrily reminded him that she had paid $50,000 up front. He sat back, calmly explaining that those $50,000 were just a deposit. This infuriated Shin, as she had paid that sum specifically for the first year. Seriously, look at this guy smirk. He was thrilled she had fallen for his trap. Then he offered another option to secure a spot for her daughter. First, she could pay him $1 million plus his personal commission. The greedy man knew this was impossible since she did not have that money. He knew she did not have that kind of cash lying around. Desperate, Shin asked about the second option. Yang kicked his feet onto the desk. Mentioning her husband's paralyzed state, he implied she already knew the dirty alternative. The message was clear. Talk about disgusting. Shin felt utterly revolted by his cheap proposal. She slammed her hands flat onto his desk, calling him a vile creep. Unfazed, Yang adjusted his glasses and declared her daughter was officially out. Shin refused to yield. No way. She turned her back on his sickening blackmail. She decided right then and there to send her daughter somewhere else. Annoyed, Yang sneered that no other prep school in the city would take her. He yelled after her, claiming she would come crawling back tomorrow to beg. Meanwhile, Ching was talking to Lynn, praising the high quality of this school. Shin had sacrificed so much money just to give their daughter a proper future. Suddenly, something caught Lynn's attention as Ching turned the wheelchair around. He spotted his wife running out of the school gates in tears. Lynn immediately realized things had gone horribly wrong inside the office. He decided to look himself. Right then, Aisha Hu's father appeared. Yang instantly got incredibly nervous, pasting a fake grin on his face. He tried acting happy to see the wealthy family, but hated them. In reality, Yang only cared about keeping a good relationship with Joe. After all, Joe was the wealthiest man in town. The arrogant couple demanded that they kick a little girl out. Yang knew they meant Rui, promising she would leave by semester's end. But that slow compromise was simply not enough for Joe. He offered a bribe of $1 million to kick her out immediately. Yang eagerly agreed to handle it, thrilled to make such easy money. But right then, the office door was kicked open with a bang. Everyone froze, turning to see Lynn standing in the doorway. Yang had absolutely no idea who he was actually dealing with here. Yet the couple began to tremble, immediately recognizing the powerful man. But Yang remained completely clueless, demanding to know what he wanted here. Oh, watch this. Lynn lands a brutal slap right on Joe's face. She knew they were dead meat. Even Yang grew uneasy. The principal still tried to dismiss him, but it backfired completely. Lynn coldly threatened to rip his tongue out if he uttered another word. Lynn slowly turned his terrifying gaze back onto Joe. He pinned Joe to the ground, his terrifying aura filling the room. He warned that if Joe ever dared to touch his wife, he would lose both hands. Lynn then cast a freezing glance at the wife, paralyzing her with fear. She immediately dropped to her knees, crying out that they admitted their mistake. Lynn offered them one way out: leave this city by tonight. The couple eagerly accepted and scrambled out of the office in panic. Lynn calmly sat on the couch, leaving Yang sweating bullets. He told the principal he had one chance to explain his actions. Yang finally realized that this formidable man was actually Rui's father. Yet the arrogant principal foolishly thought he could threaten Lynn. He stupidly tried to threaten Lynn with his position at school. Yang demanded that Lynn's wife sleep with him to keep Rui enrolled. Oh, you know he messed up. Lynn's anger boils as he stands up. With a devastating kick, he shattered Yang's glasses, sending him flying. Yang scrambled back on the floor, clutching his face in shock. He pulled out his phone, screaming at the top of his lungs. But before he could dial, the office door was kicked open again. Yang hoped for a savior, but his boss stepped into the room. The school owner's face was twisted in pure, unadulterated rage. He confronted Yang, demanding to know why he abused his power. The boss already knew about the sick demands made to Lynn's wife. Yang stood frozen, unable to process that his career was over. The owner refused to take the fall for a corrupt subordinate. He fired Yang on the spot and banished him from the city. Understand how a vegetable could ruin his life, the boss shoved the former headmaster, ordering him to apologize to the master this instant. Or face a brutal end, the boss then bowed to apologize to Lynn, promising to fix everything immediately, but this did not impress our hero at all. Lynn could easily handle his own problems. Realizing this, the boss knew. The former director was still frozen in silence and warned Yang he was on his own. Terrified, Yang began begging for mercy. Lynn leaned in and whispered that Yang was dead wrong to think he could just control people using nothing but his wealth and power. From today on, he would have no money and no home. The only thing left for him was to beg. The boss agreed it was a deserved punishment and promised Lynn his daughter would get the absolute best education. Meanwhile, the boss was incredibly relieved that the mayor called in the nick of time, saving his career and life. Lynn decided to drop the matter and ordered everyone in the room to keep his identity a complete secret. They quickly swore to stay silent, but this whole mess made it clear that someone high up already knew about his awakening. Meanwhile, Shin walked through the park, feeling like all the world's problems had piled directly onto her head. Just then, her younger sister caught up to her, asking if she was heading to the office. Shin sighed, sharing her massive trouble about needing to pay 1 million for the school. Her sister was convinced it was because they lacked social status, bringing up son. That made the protagonist's wife absolutely furious. Shin stormed away from her sister, declaring that from today on they were cutting all ties with that family. Right then, Jang mentioned she heard from their mother about Shin's mysterious boyfriend and suggested asking him for help, but Shin snapped at her to stop talking nonsense. Jang thought her sister was being totally foolish for wanting to stay with a husband who can't even move, instead of finding a powerful partner. After their brief argument, Jang walked away, leaving her sister to face her troubles alone. Later on, Jang met up with Sun at a local cafe. She noticed his tense state and asked if he was sick. Sun snapped, thinking she was trying to provoke him. Jang had no idea why he was so mad. She explained she only wanted to warn him not to fall behind if he wanted to win over her sister. Sun smiled darkly and muttered that the girl really wanted to drag him straight to his grave. The younger sister knew he had rivals, but still considered him the absolute best candidate. Hearing this, Sun offered a chill-inducing thank you, and his expression turned incredibly terrifying. Jang decided it was time to back off and announced that since he was giving up, she was taking her leave. Sun watched the girl walk away and immediately dialed his associates, offering them an easy job for them. Meanwhile, Jang strutted down the street, completely amazed at how fast the wealthy young heir surrendered. The girl was deeply frustrated when she realized she wouldn't be getting her designer bag. Suddenly, 2 suspicious men began following her, but she paid them no mind. The 2 thugs watched her closely, silently thanking Sun for the easy work. They promised themselves they would have plenty of fun using Jang. Suddenly, they stepped directly in front of her, laughing and asking if she was walking all by herself. Jang panicked, completely terrified and unable to understand what these creeps wanted. they slowly sized up her body and they laughed, demanding her body, while Ching asked Lynn if she should step in. But the protagonist decided that Jang needed to be taught a harsh lesson first. Lynn knew this blonde woman would do absolutely anything just to get some money. Still, she was his wife's sister, so he wanted to test her true desperation. Meanwhile, the thugs dragged the girl into a dark alley as she pleaded for mercy. She promised them any amount of cash, but Sun had already paid for this job. These scumbags had no intention of letting such a fun opportunity slip away. Hearing Sun's name, Jang could not comprehend why he would betray her like this. She screamed and struggled to break free, but her terror only excited her attackers. They tore her clothes open, leaving her completely exposed as she sobbed in despair. But talk about perfect timing, Ching finally stepped in to save her. Ching neutralized the first thug with one strike, then easily floored his partner. Jang huddled on the cold ground, trying to cover herself while Ching approached her. The warrior told her to skip the thanks and gave a very stern warning. Jang was ordered never to interfere in her sister's business again, or else. With that cold threat, Ching walked out of the alley, leaving Jang completely alone. Shivering and crying, Jang wondered why that powerful fighter called her sister Madam. She desperately wanted to know who the mysterious master behind this savior really was. Clinging to her clothes, she felt deeply guilty for pushing her sister toward Sun. Ching returned to Lynn's side, hoping the girl had finally learned her lesson. Ching agreed and mentioned that the grand Benhai banquet was just around the corner. But Lynn dismissed the event entirely. Meanwhile, a guard brought urgent news to Sun. The messenger reported that his thugs were defeated, catching Sun completely off guard. He could not believe his trained men failed such a simple hit job. But this setback would not stop him, and he swore to destroy Jang completely. Plotting his next cruel move, he immediately called up his close friend Liu. Time skips forward, bringing us right to the edge of the major celebration. Just then, Sun showed up at the house, claiming he had good intentions. The mother, completely oblivious to his schemes, happily welcomed him inside. Sun then asked if the girls had heard about the upcoming Benhai banquet. It was a massive event scheduled to take place in just 2 weeks. The mother immediately got excited, knowing how prestigious this grand gathering was. She begged Sun to take them along, but he claimed his family lacked invitations. Since he could not bring her himself, he offered to introduce an influential friend. Hearing this, Lynn's wife stood up, declaring she had absolutely no interest in going. However, her mother, Lei, grabbed her tightly and refused to let her leave. She pleaded with her daughter to seize such an incredibly rare and golden opportunity. While the mother kept arguing, Sun secretly plotted his next manipulation. If Jang agreed to go, he could easily secure both sisters for his plan. Suddenly, Rui stepped into the house alongside his father, catching everyone off guard. Sun never expected this dangerous man to return so early, making him incredibly nervous. He quickly bowed to the family, begging them to make their decision very soon. Lei insisted it was Jang's sole responsibility to accept the invitation. But after her terrifying ordeal, Jang was highly reluctant to trust Sun again. She walked down and finally told her mother the truth about Sun's real nature. Lee was absolutely furious, totally convinced that the young master would never do such a thing. Shin did not argue, but a deep dread grew that those thugs would attack again. Right then, Yixin mentions that her grandfather called with an urgent order yesterday. He demanded that Shin report to the main estate, which deeply worried her mother Lei. Lee hated the idea, entirely clueless as to why the old man suddenly needed her daughter. Shin admits she does not know the reason, but feels they must go immediately. Delaying was not an option, so they quickly set off for the massive Jang estate. The family main mansion was grand, far outclassing their humble countryside home. At the head of the table sat her grandfather, fuming over a missed invitation. They were ignored, and a cousin pointed out the harsh truth. Even though their profits rose this year, the elites still looked down on them. A smug blonde man stared at Shin, hinting that she could fix their problem. Shin was stunned to realize they wanted to use her for leverage. It was shocking that even this wealthy side of the family relied on her. The cold grandfather had ignored Shin for years, yet now he demanded a favor. He reminded her of past financial help, crossing his arms with an expectant glare. The old man bluntly demanded that his granddaughter pay back her debt with a favor. Shin genuinely thought he was joking, confused about what she could even offer. The arrogant blonde cousin sneered, asking if she refused to help her own bloodline. He accused her of playing dumb to escape her duty to the family. Shin argued that she was powerless to solve a crisis the patriarch himself could not. Yet the old man revealed that an elite billionaire was highly interested in her. That connection would secure their invitation, making Shin feel a sudden, icy dread. She protested that no wealthy man would want her, especially since she was a mother. Her cousin scoffed, telling her she should be grateful for such a golden opportunity. The sleazy uncle joined in, pressuring her to accept her designated role. Shin bolted upright, declaring fiercely that she was a married woman, not some plaything. Her outburst changed nothing, as her uncle cruelly mocked her situation without hesitation. He sneered that being a toy was better than serving a paralyzed, comatose husband. The patriarch slammed the table, promising eternal family favor if she complied. He swore her obedience would secure her future, but Shin refused to break. There was no way she would ever compromise her core dignity like that. She vowed to remain loyal to her husband and protect her own body. If anyone wanted to sell themselves for status, they could do it themselves. She was disgusted that her own family could even propose such a vile plan. The stubborn old man refused to back down, letting the cousin apply more pressure. Her cousin warned her of the severe consequences of defying the family. Shin stood absolutely firm, knowing only she had power over her own life. Suddenly, the cousin threatened that a tragic accident might befall her husband. Pure jealousy burned inside the cousin, who despised Shin's undeniable, radiant beauty. She demanded to know what men even saw in her, letting her rage boil over. With a violent shove, she slammed Shin down onto the cold floor. Towering over her, the cousin screamed that this was her absolute last chance to submit. The threat was clear. The lives of her loved ones were on the line. Devastated and cornered, Shin had to make a gut-wrenching sacrifice for her family. For her daughter and husband's safety, her grandfather simply waved his hand. He promised to spare her family if she secured an invitation to the upcoming celebration. Completely defeated, the frustrated girl walked out of the Jean family's main house. After a while, Sin finally returned home and went straight to the park. Sitting on a swing with her husband, she decided to tell him everything. She told Lynn exactly what her grandfather had demanded. An incredibly powerful man was after her, and she felt forced to comply. She had to play along to protect her husband and their young daughter. With tears in her eyes, Sin said she must somehow secure that ticket. Otherwise, they would completely destroy their family. She wrapped her arms around him, crying that she never wanted to betray him, but she could not bear to lose them. She begged Lynn for forgiveness. This was the only way to keep them safe. A wild fury erupted inside Lynn at how they treated his wife. His hands flared with a dangerous blue fire. Gently, he put her to sleep. He carefully sat her down, promising to hunt down everyone who threatened her. Instantly, his top assassin, Ching, materialized right beside him. She bowed deeply, completely ready to carry out his every command. Lin decided it was time to stop hiding, ordering Ching to take action. They would announce his presence at the upcoming Binhai celebration. Meanwhile, Sin's mother, Lei, was utterly confused to see her father at her home. Her cousin introduced a wealthy man named Liu Zio, who sat right beside Lei. He began smoothing her hair while she tried to process the bizarre situation. The grandfather sharply demanded she call Sin over right this second. They could not keep an influential man like Liu Zio waiting. Lee explained her daughter took Ray to school, then asked why they were visiting. The cousin revealed that Liu Xiao liked Sin and wanted her. If she cooperated, their struggling family would finally be set for life. The cousin smirked, claiming it was all thanks to their grandfather's clever planning. A few minutes later, the sisters returned, and Liu Xiao immediately stared them down. He smirked warmly, thoroughly pleased with the cousin's excellent choice. But Sin's mood soured seeing the grandfather, who had promised to leave them alone. The old man introduced Liu Xiao, declaring Sin must accompany him tonight. Liu Xiao cleared his throat, boasting how much he looked forward to their date. Li rushed over, whispering to her daughter not to waste this massive opportunity. Her grandfather glared, deeply annoyed by Sin's cold reception. She refused to greet their guest, but Liu Xiao just brushed it off. He laughed, saying a little shyness on a first date was totally normal. The wealthy heir began introducing himself, bragging about the massive companies he owned. But Sin simply walked away in total disdain. The old man was furious. He barely held back his rage, and honestly, things were about to get incredibly ugly. Liu Xiao asked if this family dared to disrespect him. Cousin Yan suddenly shoved Sin. She screamed at her, calling her ungrateful for acting so incredibly disrespectful. Yan loomed over Lynn's wife, demanding she drop to her knees and apologize. But Liu Xiao raised his hand, cutting the cousin off with a cold stare. He warned them that securing tickets for the grand celebration just got much harder. He clutched his cheek, warned that this attitude would cost them their invitation. The cousin clung to Liu, promising the grandfather that everything was fine. Then a sinister, threatening smile crept onto Liu's face. He demanded one more companion, prompting Li to suggest that Jian should join them. Jian absolutely detested this arrangement, but her grandfather just sat there. Lit up a cigarette, telling the young man he could take both sisters along. Li screamed at Jian for resisting, insisting that her sister Xin would protect her from any danger. Liu pulled the confused, trembling girl close and ordered both sisters to follow him, fully convinced that a single night with him would bring the girls immense benefits along with a handsome reward. Xin refused to go, but the man threatened her daughter and husband. Liu gloated, thrilled to see the beauty surrender her principles for family duty. Our main character observed everything, silently lurking on the stairs. He quietly watched from the stairs before calling Qing with an order. He demanded she cancel the Jian family's invitation immediately. Only Xin gets in. Meanwhile, the sisters walked outside. As Liu tried to leave through the gate, Qing suddenly blocked his path. She ordered him to stop, leaving Liu completely clueless about who she was. But Qing declared he could not take the girls to the celebration. Dead serious, she warned him to start preparing for a very painful, tragic downfall. Liu mocked her, assuming she was just jealous and wanted an invite. Talk about instant karma. His smugness vanished when Qing revealed he was disqualified. Jian stared in awe, wondering who this mysterious savior could be. Liu scoffed, refusing to believe his incredibly wealthy family could be banned. He accused her of acting, but Qing was completely done wasting her breath. She was completely done wasting her precious breath on this brainless, arrogant fool. Xin begged Qing not to worry, but Liu refused to let them go. He snarled, threatening to make Xin crawl on her knees before him. Qing absolutely lost it, delivering a glorious, soul-satisfying slap across his face. The impact sent him crashing straight to the dirt, screaming in pure fury. He vowed to destroy her, but Qing coldly threatened to cut his tongue out. Suddenly, the old grandfather stormed into the courtyard, practically shaking with rage. He was terrified that his family would lose their chance at the gala. The mother looked lost when he blamed her, claiming she had no control. Before the old man could scream, Qing interrupted with a booming voice. She made it loud and clear that Liu was officially disqualified. He has no invitation, disqualified from entering the venue. To make matters worse, she announced that out of the entire family, Only Shin is invited to the grand celebration. Shock washed over the crowd, especially the stunned, speechless grandfather. Ching bowed deeply to Shin, promising her exclusive invite was on its way. The grandfather scoffed, refusing to believe such a prestigious pass exists. He muttered that no nobody off the streets could ever get one. Right on cue, a courier arrived at the gate with a delivery. He announced he was there to deliver a VIP invitation to Shin. Lei struggled to process the man's words, utterly baffled that Shin was actually invited. Rising from the ground, Lei suddenly recognized Wang and gasped in total surprise. He quickly announced to the crowd that this newcomer was the official organizer. Lei claimed this would finally prove his own invite, but Wang just stared back. Looking at the battered air, the organizer asked who he was and why he was acting so uncouthly. Pointing to his chest, Lei proudly declared himself the heir of the Lei family. Banned, Wang calmly explained that the Lei family could not attend this year. Hearing this, the old grandfather realized the family was completely blacklisted. Wang himself had personally banned the Leus from entering the grand event. Expel that trash, Wang immediately ordered his security team to throw Lei out right now. Wang then offered a warm smile, pulling out a luxurious invitation letter. Where is Shin? He searched for her while she stood there feeling incredibly anxious. And here is the shocker. Instead of a threat, Wang unexpectedly bowed deeply. He presented a prestigious invitation from the mysterious Mr. Lynn, urging her to attend. Shin accepted it, asking if this Lynn was the benefactor who booked her hotel. Wang nodded, confirming that this was not the first time his master had sent gifts. Hearing about these grand gestures, Jian immediately started plotting her sister's future. If Shin married this wealthy tycoon, their family's money troubles would vanish forever. She eagerly asked to meet him, while Lin watched everything unfold from upstairs. Standing by his window, Lin smirked, amused by his sister-in-law's gold-digging antics. Wang quickly shut down the request, explaining that the boss was far too busy. The organizer had zero time for random guests. Meanwhile, Qin glared at the blonde sister. He warned her in a low voice to stay out of Shin's personal business. Jian felt a cold shiver run down her spine under his heavy, threatening gaze. Annoyed yet terrified, she muttered that her sister would never abandon her current husband. Wang bowed respectfully to Shin, stating his task here was officially finished. Get out, Qin gestured for him to leave, as the greedy grandfather rushed over. The old man demanded to know the identity of the powerful host behind the party. Her cousin Yan snatched the invitation away, asking with a smug, mocking sneer. Yan sneered, asking how a married woman managed to seduce such a wealthy man. She truly believed she was the only one glamorous enough to attend the event. However, Shin refused to back down, desperately wanting to see if Lin was her husband. Unbelievable, the furious grandfather yelled, accusing her of putting her useless husband first. He demanded she divorce the loser and focus entirely on making their family rich. To the old man, her husband Lin was nothing but a shameful, heavy burden. To keep the peace, Shin agreed to let them take the invite instead. She surrendered the card, hoping her sacrifice would protect her husband from their wrath. Yan smirked with delight, thrilled that her rival was stripped of her invite. Up in the bedroom, Lin and his bodyguard Qin quietly watched this pathetic display. Qin wanted to storm downstairs and teach them a lesson, but Lin held him back. He whispered that they would soon beg for mercy when everything they owned collapsed. Suddenly, Qin's phone rang with an urgent call from their daughter's school principal. Little Rui had suddenly collapsed and was rushed straight to the emergency room. Panicked over his unconscious daughter, Lin ordered Qin to start the engine immediately. Within minutes, they tore through the streets, arriving at Benhai Central Hospital. The doctor carefully examined the medical reports as Qing and Lin stepped inside. They asked how the young girl was feeling, but the doctor had already ruled out other options. Her old illness had relapsed. Lin sat on the bed, completely devastated. He asked if another bone marrow transplant could save her, but the doctor hesitated. Instead, the doctor suggested they first bring in Dr. Lai to examine Rui. Hearing that Dr. Li was actually in town caught Lynn completely off guard. The doctor explained that Lai rushed back the moment rumors of the master's awakening spread. Since he was already at the hospital, Lynn immediately sent his subordinate to find him. The order was simple: bring the legendary doctor back as fast as possible. With time ticking, the doctor asked Lynn if he truly understood how severe Rui's illness was. Lynn admitted he was gravely wounded back then and never fully understood his daughter's condition. The doctor explained that 2 years ago, the young princess awakened 2 legendary bloodlines. She tapped into both the imperial and royal lineages at once, causing her coma. Lynn was stunned. He simply could not believe what he was hearing. Suddenly, Dr. Li walked right into the room, assuring the giant of war not to worry. The old doctor promised he was there to save their beloved young princess. Seeing Lynn alive filled the old man's eyes with emotional tears of pure relief. This sudden emotional outburst made the other men in the room pretty uncomfortable. They just stared at each other in silence until Lynn cleared his throat. He wanted to focus on his daughter's dangerous bloodline clash right away. Normally, no one could hold both royal and imperial blood, but Dr. Li knew better. The doctor revealed there are only 3 people alive with both power sources. Lynn knew he possessed both, and so did a certain young boy in the capital. But who on earth was this mysterious third person he had never heard of? Dr. Li let the silence linger before letting out a massive burst of spiritual pressure. He declared that the third person was Rui, as his aura began swirling around her. Lynn hated the sound of that and immediately barked out Qing's name. The young girl quickly slid behind the elder, while Qing closed the distance. Qing hovered his hand near the doctor's neck, demanding a very clear explanation first. Li explained that Lynn's royal blood was sealed away years ago to protect them. It should never have reached his daughter, leaving everyone wondering how this happened. Lynn had no idea where the imperial lineage even came from in her. He motioned for Qing to stand down, letting the old doctor continue speaking. Dr. Li promised that under his care, her imperial ancestry would stay completely hidden. That was all Lynn needed to hear. He decided to trust him. Qing realized they needed to inform Xin, who was already on her way. Lynn knew he had to get moving and told Lai to handle the explanation. Shortly after, Lynn's worried wife, Yinsen, came sprinting down the hospital hallways. She was in an absolute panic, moving so fast she barely noticed Sun. He tried to ask what she was doing, no answer. His buddy Leo got annoyed, not wanting to get dragged into any drama. Sun took a playful smack to the head and promised he was innocent. He figured the frantic mother was just terrified for her sick little girl. Leo wondered why they even cared, so Sun pointed out the obvious. Xin would desperately need a ton of money to pay for her treatment. The powerful giant family prepared to exploit this chance, hoping to make Xin beg for mercy. At that moment, Xin burst into the room, desperately asking what happened to her daughter. Dr. Li quickly urged her to keep quiet, warning her not to wake the little princess. Xin never expected to see another medical expert standing next to Dr. Chen. She quietly asked who he was, and Dr. Chen proudly introduced his esteemed mentor. He assured her that Rui was completely safe, then snapped his fingers to wake the girl. As she stirred in her bed, Dr. Li explained she would wake up from the acupuncture. Right on cue, Rui slowly opened her eyes and immediately looked around for her father. She was certain she had just heard his voice, but only her mother stood there. Xin told her she had fainted at school and was blessed to find this miraculous doctor. Rui looked at the elder, immediately recognizing him as a brilliant, legendary doctor. Overwhelmed with deep emotion, the old doctor remarked on how incredibly sweet the child was. He gently leaned forward to give her a warm hug while Xin watched, deeply worried. She feared she could never afford this treatment since her family refused to help her. Seeing her distress, Dr. Li smiled and refused any payment for his medical services. He explained he was sent directly by Mr. Lynn, and trust me, this changes everything. The little girl realized she had actually heard her father's comforting voice. Shin eagerly asked the doctor to reveal who this mysterious Mr. Lin truly was. She desperately wanted to know why he kept helping them, but Lee remained silent. He only revealed that Lin was actually the supreme lord of the southern border. Promising she would learn the rest when the time was right, he tucked her in. The doctor handed Shin his personal card, telling her to call if anything happened. Now that the little girl was safe and awake, he prepared to take his leave. Once the doctors left, Rui called her mother over and confessed the truth. She insisted that her father sent the doctor, and she definitely heard his voice. Shin normally brushed off her stories, but this time she wanted to believe. She secretly wished that the legendary Lord Lin was indeed her long-lost husband. Even though she had never met him, his grand identity would explain everything. Yet one detail kept bothering her. Why had her husband not shown his face? Rui quickly noticed the heavy, anxious thoughts clouding her mother's face. Knowing those worries were eating at her, Shin quickly forced a bright smile. She playfully winked at her daughter, cheerfully announcing they were finally going home. Suddenly, Dr. Chen stepped forward, gently interrupting their plans to leave. He insisted that the little princess stay under medical observation for a few days. Shin hated the idea of leaving her fragile daughter alone in a hospital room. Yet brave little Rui insisted her mother go home and rest up. Reassured by her daughter's strength, Shin left Rui to recover in peace. Meanwhile, Lin remained in the building, secretly checking in on his family. He summoned his loyal subordinate, asking if she had dug up files on the Jin family. King had worked swiftly, uncovering some highly unusual secrets in a short time. She reported that while most relatives were ordinary, Shin's late father was different. Hearing this, Lin recalled meeting his wife's father just once. He remembered that brief encounter vividly, right before the old man suddenly passed away. King confirmed, exposing rumors that the man was never the true heir. This unexpected piece of the puzzle instantly sparked Lin's deep curiosity. He processed this information, realizing that if it was true, the status of his father-in-law was highly questionable. Lee added that thanks to his high social standing, he was able to discover that the emperor actually had heirs with light-colored hair. This fact could mean that Shin's father was a direct descendant of the emperor, but it was impossible to prove for sure. The old man then admitted his desire to accept the young princess as his disciple. Lin agreed, allowing the man to teach her how to control her special abilities before asking what else he required. In response, Lee made a simple request, asking to attend the upcoming Bin High celebration, eager to witness Lin's grand return. Meanwhile, Shin had no choice but to temporarily leave her young daughter at the hospital. She gently told her to behave and listen to Dr. Chen, promising Rui that she would return immediately after work. The worried mother assured her that everything would be perfectly fine and said goodbye. Suddenly, Shin gets a sudden call from her cousin. You can already feel the drama brewing. Shin didn't understand what more her cousin wanted after taking the invitation. But Yan demanded she show up at the office immediately. Half an hour later, Shin arrived. As she approached the finance department, she heard loud screaming. Yan was standing inside holding a coffee cup, screaming furiously at the employees, demanding to know what they were doing. Shin didn't want to see her toxic cousin, but she needed to know why they summoned her. Yan turned to Shin, scoffing that she could ask such a stupid question. Yan barked that Shin was the financial manager, yet was missing during a massive company crisis. Then she threw her coffee straight at Shin, but the woman managed to dodge, firmly reminding her that she had requested today off. Yan completely dismissed this, threatening to dock half her monthly salary and warning that next time she wouldn't miss. Shin tried to argue back, but it was useless, because her cousin insisted the entire company was failing solely because of people like Shin. The arrogant blonde completely ignored her own failures, refusing to admit the True crisis was her fault since all accounts went through her. Yan caught the accusation and instantly demanded Shin fix the entire crisis within 3 days or face immediate termination. The deadline was insanely short, leaving Shin hoping her cousin was joking, but she was dead serious. Yan repeated that failure meant getting fired on the spot. Yan looked incredibly pleased, absolutely certain that Shin would never be able to resolve the issue. Meanwhile, Sun was sitting in his office, muttering that just like Lu Yu, he was getting sick of waiting. Still, he added that Yan guaranteed there would be zero issues with Shin this time. Lu Yu was anxious to know how he would secure an advantage over her. Sun grinned, fully confident that this time they would actually succeed, but his partner couldn't relax at all, remembering that their previous schemes had failed. Sun replied that he had a backup plan. If the first one failed, they had a backup. Still, Sun questioned Yan's promise, which made her incredibly defensive, claiming she would never leak their secrets to anyone. Yan winked playfully, leaving the men silently agreeing that her family genetics were highly unfair. Lu Yu pressed his partner for details, wanting to know the exact plan to ensure he was prepared for any outcome. Sun smirked, noting that in Shin's life only two people truly mattered: her sweet little daughter Rui and her mysterious husband Lynn. Meanwhile, Lynn walked into his daughter's room, gently asking if she would be willing to become Dr. Li's disciple. Rui asked if the old man would teach. The god of war lovingly watched his daughter, showing her how to heal others. He wanted to explain what he would teach next, but Qing suddenly interrupted. She appeared behind him, reporting that his wife Shin was having serious company trouble. The Yan family was seizing their house for losses, so Lin questioned her. He asked if someone was pulling the strings. Qing reported seeing Lu and Sun. They were spotted in the finance department. Little Rai feared for her mother. But Lin convinced his daughter that he would handle the family trouble himself, and that she should just focus on recovering. Qing waited for orders, asking if she should capture the two troublemakers. Lin decided they would handle them later. For now, his main priority was protecting Shin. Meanwhile, his stressed wife sat in her office for hours, completely unable to find a way out of this. Every single business partner had suddenly pulled their investments from the company. Even the banks refused to grant a loan, leaving Shin sick with worry. She had only 1 day left. Talk about a total nightmare scenario. Her desperate thoughts were shattered when someone rudely marched in without even knocking. The intruder was Sun, executing his wicked scheme to corner her at her weakest moment. Acting smug and relaxed, he claimed he was there out of pure nobility. But Shin immediately stood up, refusing to accept any of his help. She coldly ordered him to leave. Instead, Sun pressured her with threats, reminding her that her family would soon be homeless. Still, she refused him. Sun pretended to be a saint, claiming he only wanted to help her. As he walked toward the exit, he turned and gave her a final, wicked ultimatum. If she wanted his help, she had to meet him at a hotel by 9 o'clock. Livid, Shin shouted that she would never make a deal with someone so vile. Sun did not argue, simply repeating that he would be waiting for her tomorrow. Shin realized this entire desperate business crisis had been carefully set up by her own cousin and son. Meanwhile, her mother was frantically sifting through a massive stack of papers, demanding to know why company assets were arriving. At their home, Shin finally confessed that the Yan family was seizing everything. Her mother was absolutely furious that another disaster was striking their family. Yet she assumed her daughter could easily ask that powerful man, Lin, for help. She figured he would solve this instantly, but her daughter had a major secret. Shin admitted she had never actually met this mysterious protector before. The mother immediately blamed her daughter for all their failures. Shin was devastated. She could not let them down, since the Wang family ignored her letters. She felt forced to accept Sun's sinister offer. The fateful morning quickly arrived. With the clock ticking closer to 9, she made her decision. Shin arrived at the designated hotel room and stepped inside, heart pounding. She immediately announced her arrival, but wait, that is definitely not Sun standing there. And of course, she was looking down and didn't even notice the difference. Then Patriarch Wang stepped forward and greeted her warmly when Shin saw him. She panicked, assuming he was conspiring with Sun to completely ruin her. The older man approached her and explained that she was completely mistaken. He explained that he had been busy, then handed her a massive check. Wang assured her that Mr. Lin would personally resolve all her troubles. The Supreme Sun card was a trick, which was how he got into this room. Shin felt an overwhelming sense of relief, deeply grateful to the man who just rescued her. Wang quietly stepped out, leaving the girl safe inside as he turned completely serious. He immediately met up with Lynn to report that his wife was finally safe. Shin was safe, and now Lynn was ready to deliver some brutal punishment. Meanwhile, Lu sat fuming in a private suite because his men had not reported back yet. He muttered that the woman was surprisingly tough to break just as his phone began to ring. His subordinate Yan appeared on screen, boastfully claiming he could kidnap absolutely anyone. Suddenly, a loud knock came from the door, and Lu rushed over, expecting Shin. But the door opened, and he faced someone else entirely. Unbelievable. It was Ching, who immediately delivered a devastating kick right to his face. Lu crashed backward into a dining table, sending shattered plates flying everywhere. Blood dripped from his busted lip as he struggled to understand why she was attacking him. Ching offered no explanation, stepping aside as the true threat walked into the room. Lu stared in shock at the man walking in, finding his face intensely familiar. Lin introduced himself as a soldier who had spent long years on the front lines. He was the legendary commander known across the nation as the supreme leader of the South. Lu began to tremble with absolute terror, wondering why such a powerhouse would protect Shin. Lin coldly revealed that she was his wife before shoving Lu hard onto the floor. Lu could not believe a supposedly crippled man could ever be the mighty Southern leader. In response, Lin unleashed a suffocating aura, declaring he did not care what Lu believed. Leaning down, the god of war grabbed Lu by his collar with a vice grip. He lifted him effortlessly into the air, determined to make him pay for his sins. Lu laughed it off. He truly believed Lin wouldn't dare touch him. After all, he was one of the wealthiest and most influential heirs around. He was dead wrong. Lin slammed his body violently against the concrete. Severely injured, Lu no longer doubted the terrifying identity of the man before him. Mercy, he begged for forgiveness, desperately offering any amount of cash. Lin looked down at him and asked if he truly looked like someone who needed cash. Ching watched with a cold smile as her master made the trash feel real pain. With Lu's arm completely shattered and his body broken, Lin finally stopped the beating. He coldly announced that this was merely a gentle warning for what he did. No second chances. Next time there would be zero mercy. As Lin prepared to depart, he gave one final, chilling order to keep his mouth shut. Just silence, they walked down the hotel corridor, leaving the chaos behind. Ching quietly asked her master if he was worried about any potential retaliation. If Lu's family tries anything, Lin promised to utterly annihilate them all. Suddenly, Ching's phone rang, cutting their conversation short as she answered. She grew pale with terror as Dr. Chen delivered some horrifying news. The young Princess Rui had been kidnapped, and her location was completely unknown. Seething with absolute rage, they rushed to the hospital while keeping Shin in the dark. Arriving at the infirmary in record time, they confronted a panicked Dr. Chen. The furious god of war demanded to know exactly when his daughter went missing. The doctor explained that he had left to set up her physical therapy session. But she was gone, Rui was gone, leaving him drowning in self-blame. He couldn't stop them from taking his little girl. Pure rage takes over and he smashes the infirmary floor with a single, devastating punch. Chen drops straight to his knees, begging for forgiveness, crying that he should have protected the little princess better. But Lin calmly tells him to stand up. He doesn't. Blame the doctor, who was just doing his actual job when it happened. Chen stands there completely stunned as Lin barks an order to Ching find the checkpoint. Hunt down the kidnapper right now. Meanwhile, a security guard sits in his booth, completely glued to a mobile game, totally obsessed with getting a win. Suddenly, Ching materializes right behind him, cutting through his digital distraction to report a missing patient and demand access to the security footage. But the guard just shrugs, demanding more details about who went missing. Ching explains it is a little girl, and she vanished about an hour ago. The guard looks up, totally annoyed, saying it has only been an hour. And they should just check the hallways first. He turns back to his phone, muttering that he will start a real search when a full day has actually passed. Suddenly, a flash of energy rips the phone right out of his hands, terrifying the lazy guard. Lin has zero interest in wasting time, and he is ready to tear the room apart, but the guard gets defensive, shouting that civilians are not allowed here and he cannot show the tapes. That is when Lin lets loose his terrifying, suffocating aura. Ching knows heads are about to roll. She quickly steps in, whipping out an official token to prove their connection to the imperial family. The guard freezes, utterly speechless at the sight of the supreme imperial crest. It is a literal symbol of ultimate authority in the empire. Ching coldly advises him to hurry up and pull the footage right now. Lin starts to calm down, and the terrified guard scrambles over to his terminal. He furiously scrolls through the past hour of security feeds until he finally spots the camera showing Ray sleeping peacefully in her bed. Lin stares intently at the screen, demanding to zoom in on the lower section. There they see a man dressed as a doctor lifting the sleeping child and carrying her off into the shadows. Squinting at the blurry figure, the guard feels a jolt of recognition. He mutters that the guy looks strangely familiar. Lin leans in close as the guard identifies him as a hospital intern named Xiao Gang. Ching admits she has never seen him around. The guard explains that Xiao is pretty unpopular and only got this job through backroom connections. He adds that 2 days ago, Xiao came around asking suspicious questions about the cameras. Talk about a massive red flag. Now, Lin is completely losing control again. He coldly gives Ching exactly 5 minutes to find Xiao. Knowing better than to argue, she instantly vanishes to execute the order. Left behind in the office, the guard suffocates under the crushing pressure of Lin's presence, terrified he might be the next target. The lethal aura is so heavy it practically chokes the room, keeping him completely frozen in place. As Lin waits in silence, the guard wonders if everyone from the imperial family is this terrifying. Fortunately, Ching does not disappoint. Within minutes, she drags Xiao back and violently throws him at Lin's feet. Her report was clear. Her men caught him sneaking through the hospital. They grabbed him immediately. Of course, the captive insisted he was a doctor. That was his excuse for being there. Lin demanded to know where he took the Xiao just played dumb. He pretended he had no idea what child they meant. The god of war was completely out of patience. He slammed his foot down, pressing on the kidnapper's shoulder so hard that the concrete beneath them cracked. Lin kept crushing until Xiao's hand was pinned flat to the floor. Meanwhile, Ching and the guard watched the interrogation, both of them uneasy about the brutal violence of Lin's methods. Under that agonizing pressure, the kidnapper finally broke. He confessed that he was hired. Hearing this made the god of war smile. No more holding back. Now, he had a perfect excuse to unleash his rage. Lin rose, then he delivered a devastating, heavy blow straight to Xiao. It looked like a casual strike, but it left Xiao coughing up blood. Giving him no time to breathe, Lin stepped right onto his chest. He ground his boot down, pinning the terrified kidnapper flat to the dirt. Xiao tried to play dead, hoping to escape further torture, but Ching instantly saw through the act and offered to make him talk herself. But Lin refused to waste any more time on slow interrogation methods. Realizing his life was on the line, the young doctor scrambled to speak. He promised to tell them everything and blurted out where he took Rui. Choking out the words, he confessed he put her in Sun's car to go to his estate. Lynn was not surprised to hear that name. Sun's fate was now officially sealed. Zio whimpered that Sun had forced him to sneak in and kidnap the little girl. He begged for mercy, but Lynn knew this piece of trash deserved no pity. A fatal mistake, and honestly, death was way too good for him. Lynn ordered Ching to deal with the kidnapper before heading out to Sun's mansion. While they cleaned up the mess, things were dead quiet over at Sun's place. Rui was tied to a chair, screaming at the top of her lungs. She warned her captor that the police would absolutely come and lock him up. Sun just laughed, mocking the idea that anyone would dare touch an influential family. He was a vile man who actually tried to shift the blame onto Shin. In his sick mind, the little girl had to pay for ruining his health. He pinched her face, but she bravely fought back, defending her family. Rui held onto the hope that her father would show up and save her. Sun struck her forehead in a rage, furious that she dared mention Lin's name. To him, that man was the sole reason for all his current misery. Rui burst into tears, but her crying was suddenly cut short by shattering glass. Shattered glass, Lynn appeared behind Sun and punched him hard. The walls shattered. He fell to the ground while his daughter watched in shock. Her tears stopped. Just like that, her father was finally here. Lynn rushed over to untie her, softly promising that she was safe now. She sobbed that she knew he would come, clinging tightly to him. Lynn carefully checked her over, searching for any signs of harm. She whimpered that the bad man hit her forehead, but the pain was already gone. Lynn gently lifted Rui in his arms, asking if she was really all right. Lynn was ready to teach the bandit a lesson, and his little girl eagerly agreed. Sun trembled when the girl told her father she did not remember which hand her uncle hit her with, but she said it really hurt. Sun decided to make a run for it and escape outside, wondering how Lynn tracked him down. So incredibly fast, the god of war listened closely to his princess's story and reached a dark conclusion. Sun was already near the exit and truly believed he would be saved as soon as he ran out into the street, because he believed that Lynn would never strike him in front of witnesses, but the fool did not realize that Lynn was the legendary god of war, and his sheer speed completely defied human limits. That was why Sun's escape failed instantly, and now he must face his punishment. Lynn looked coldly at the terrified kidnapper, saying he never remembered letting him leave. Every single second, Sun realized the sheer gravity of his crime and was consumed by pure horror. He desperately tried to strike back, aiming at the hand holding the little girl. Then Sun scrambled away as fast as possible, screaming out for help and praying his family would save him. But of course, he could not run far because Lynn kept a brutal grip on his hand. Then, with a swift, brutal twist, he snapped Sun's arm, making him shriek in agony. Ray covered her ears and complained to her father that the man was too noisy. Lynn promised that the bad uncle would be silent right now, and instantly conjuring a blazing blue flame in his left hand to unleash on Sun. Sun screamed so violently that the little girl shut her eyes, his vision darkened, and his screams turned into barely audible squeaks from his mouth before he fell to the ground. At that exact moment, Lynn heard the desperate screams of the father, who burst into the room and begged him to spare his son. The father looked in shock at his child's state, realizing things were incredibly dire. His chest was severely charred, and his entire body was covered in brutal bruises. His eyes were rolled back. Then his father fell to his knees before the god of war, begging him to show mercy and forgive Sun's foolish mistake. But Lynn was completely unmoved, knowing these monsters had shown no mercy to his beloved daughter. The family head knew they stood absolutely no chance against this monster. Right then, screams echoed through the room. Ching suddenly appeared, reporting the hospital was secure. Little Ray was startled by her sudden arrival, but her father gently reassured her that this aunt was a trusted ally, so she had nothing to fear. With that, Lynn handed Ray to Ching, ready to finish off the wicked uncles alone. Sun's father was paralyzed with fear. Ray clung to Ching, wishing her father's success in taking revenge. The moment Ray left the room, the god of war finally unleashed his true wrath. Eli recalled showing mercy. Kindness once, but never again. The family head tried to reason with him, but Lynn coldly reminded him that trash had no right to bargain. Right then, Sun was desperately scrambling backward, but his pathetic cries fell on deaf ears as Lynn crushed the life out of him with one blow. The helpless father could only watch his own son die right before his eyes. Lynn declared that begging for mercy was utterly useless now, since he never gave second chances to anyone. He moved like a ghost, closing the distance to the stunned, trembling father. The hero grabbed the man's head, warning him that his family had better leave town immediately. Within one day, or they would be beheaded. The father knew it. If he did not want to leave this world right then, he had to agree with Lynn and leave the city behind. After everything that happened on Lee's estate, his father burst into the room in a furious rage, demanding to know who dared strike his son. The furious father promised to tear the culprit to pieces. Lee wanted to complain to his dad like always, but then he suddenly remembered if he dared to reveal Lynn's identity, that monster would completely destroy him. For the sake of the family's safety, he kept his mouth shut. Completely numb, he admitted. He did not even know what to say. This made his father turn on his son, delivering a brutal, stinging slap directly across his face while telling Lee to remember that they rule this city. Lee wondered if the giant family was actually stronger and decided to keep Lynn's identity a secret. His furious father looked down on his son as weak, but said his story did not matter because he already hired an investigator. Right at that exact moment, a man appeared next to them to report that he had managed to find a direct connection between the attacker and the giant family. The father was fully prepared to wipe out the entire enemy clan immediately. He's noticed the investigator lingering, guessing there was more news to share. He was right. The man quickly brought up Sun's brutal murder, adding that the killer was the exact same person who thrashed Lee. Talk about a nightmare scenario. Body, leaving him completely terrified that he would be the very next victim. Meanwhile, his father considered Sun's family a complete failure for losing to someone from the powerful giant family. Blinded by a dark desire for absolute blood revenge, he quickly hatched a plan to destroy the giant family, and just like that, the trap was set. Soon the big day arrived, and it was time for Jin to collect her daughter. The hospital, she walked in carrying a sweet cake, smiling, but then horror, Rui was not in her clean hospital bed, and the room was completely empty. She screamed for her in sheer panic. No answer, just terrifying silence, and she froze. Something bad had definitely happened. The box of cake crashed loudly to the floor, slipping from her hands, but then she heard her daughter's voice. Jin ran instantly. She hugged the sweet girl incredibly tight, checking if she was okay. Rui did not want her to worry, so she lied. Then Jin warned her daughter never to play with strangers, but Jin froze up when Rui suddenly said that Lynn had taken her out, especially since Jin believed her husband. He was resting at home. Lynn watched with deep emotion, seeing how his beautiful, loving his wife valued their daughter's life far above her own. He was standing nearby, admitting with a very heavy heart that Jin was a wonderful, loving mother. The protagonist felt a deep ache, knowing he owed her everything. Then Lynn gently reminded them both that it was time to leave, because tonight they were attending the grand Benhai banquet. It was time to get ready. Lynn was fully prepared to fight until his absolute last breath to protect his precious family. His beloved family. Meanwhile, a powerful figure relaxed in a pool, sipping his wine calmly. He turned directly to his subordinate, asking if the absolutely incredible rumors were true about the legendary Lynn finally awakening. His guard confirmed that whispers were spreading and that a rival family had already been completely Banished by Lynn, however, the Dragon Lord scoffed, believing this was all just a joke. He tried to act important, but his family had already lost all their real power. His servant believed Lynn was a major threat and wanted him gone. The Dragon Lord flared up. He lashed out at the suggestion. No warnings given, he simply blasted him with sheer force. He warned them that he never recalled giving any order to kill. Groveling on the floor, the servant argued that keeping the god of war alive was risky. Yet the emperor knew Lynn still had value as a public figure. His influence over the citizens could still be exploited for their own plans. But first, they needed to display him to the public. The loyal servant agreed, promising to handle the scheme flawlessly. The emperor stepped up, reaching his monstrous, scale-covered hand toward the holy spear. But the legendary weapon fiercely resisted his touch, crackling with violent red lightning. The Dragon Lord pulled back as the weapon completely rejected his grip. A sudden burning shockwave scorched his flesh, leaving a nasty wound. Grimacing, he realized Lynn was truly alive and deserved a personal visit. Right then, a set of creepy eyes split open across his deformed palm. Pure, destructive energy pooled inside his hand as his anger peaked. If he could not wield the ancient artifact, he would turn it to ash. A brilliant explosion of thunderous light engulfed the room, matching his crazed laughter. Back at the house, Lynn and his family were having a quiet evening. But a sudden, ominous shiver ran down the war god's spine. He realized with absolute shock that his sacred spear was gone. Ching saw his expression turn pale and immediately asked him what was wrong. When he brought up his weapon, Ching recalled it was seized by royals. She knew the legendary spear would only ever respond to its true master. There was no way anyone else could ever hope to wield it. But Lynn quietly broke the news. It was shattered just moments ago. Ching gasped, unable to believe a sacred, divine artifact could be broken so easily. Lynn narrowed his eyes, knowing this was a direct, personal warning. Only one man had the raw power to smash that holy weapon. And that person would definitely show up at the celebration at Bane High. Sitting in his wheelchair, Lynn swore he would reclaim everything stolen from him. Suddenly, a stealthy figure in black crept up toward their peaceful home. "Oh, this is bad," he throws a deadly blade right at Lynn. Shards of glass exploded everywhere as the blade flew past his face. Ching instantly recognized the danger. An assassin was on their tail. Lynn dodged just in time, catching the cold metal between his fingers. Ching dashed out, determined to hunt down the runaway killer herself. Lynn quietly analyzed the weapon, noting the imperial emblem on it. Meanwhile, Jiang and her mother sat in the parlor, hearing strange noises upstairs. Before they could investigate, the entire house suddenly plunged into pitch-black darkness. Lynn realized with dread that multiple killers had infiltrated the home. Jiang let out a sharp scream as a dark shadow suddenly materialized before her. A towering figure stood right in front of her, blocking her escape. She demanded to know his identity, but absolute silence was her only answer. The silent masked killer glares coldly at the terrified girls. He warns them that they will pay with their lives for protecting the wrong target. Suddenly, a glowing purple energy ball quickly forms in his hand. He prepares to strike, forcing Lei to desperately offer him all their cash. She begs the masked attacker to spare them in exchange for everything. But the cold-blooded assassin mockingly tells the poor woman to take her money straight to the grave. Jung tightly hugs his trembling mother as agonizing seconds slowly tick away. Suddenly, they notice a mysterious warrior step forward, firmly locking his hand onto the killer's wrist. Lynn twists his arm, completely refusing to let him harm defenseless girls. He is absolutely determined to protect the Jiang family right now. Even though they never got along, blue lightning suddenly crackles with terrifying intensity around his fist. Unfazed, the assassin charges up his free fist with dark energy. Both men unleash their strikes at the exact same moment, causing a massive clash. The cocky mercenary laughs in amusement, immediately preparing to launch another devastating, close-range assault. He actually enjoys this, completely unaware that he is fighting an absolute god. Suddenly, a flashing knife appears in the masked killer's hand as tension peaks. Right as the door begins to creak open, the masked freak drops a chilling question. Lynn moves in a blur, but by the time Shin and his daughter step in, both fighters have vanished without a trace, leaving behind an empty, silent room. Shin finds the girls huddled in terror. Jang nervously asks if her sister is back. Confused as to why they are sitting in pitch darkness, Shin flips the light switch. The bright lights instantly reveal the absolute devastation left behind by the brief duel. While Lee slowly recovers, Jang explains that a masked monster suddenly attacked them. She says they were almost killed, but a mysterious hero showed up just in time. Young chimes in, saying their savior looked exactly like Mr. Lin from the birthday party. Hearing this, young Ray bolts inside, proudly cheering that his dad saved everyone. The grandmother sneers in disgust, still viewing our hero as absolute trash. Meanwhile, having chased the assassin away, Lin examines the mysterious golden dagger he left. Suddenly, Ching slips through the window, looking deeply apologetic as she reports in. She admits she lost track of the masked attacker during his desperate escape. Lin tells her not to worry, instead presenting the golden dagger for her to inspect. Ching instantly gasps, recognizing the legendary weapon held in her hands. This is a sacred blade, awarded only to the Dragon Lord's elite servants. She notes that the upcoming grand banquet has suddenly been rescheduled to nighttime. Lin immediately orders Ching to have Wang secure Axon and bring her to safety. He knows his hidden enemies are planning a deadly trap for the celebration. Ching bows respectfully and vanishes into the night to carry out her orders. Suddenly, the door flies open as his sweet little daughter bursts into the room. She beams with pride, fully convinced her dad was the one who saved everyone. Smiling softly, Lin scoops her up, warmly praising her for being so clever. But he gently asks Rui how she would feel if he were not a hero. The sweet girl smiles, saying he will always be her hero if he protects them. Right then, her mother Axon quietly steps into the bedroom with a warm smile. She gently tells little Rui not to exhaust her father after his long day. Scooping the girl up, she promises they will let him get some well-deserved rest. She was waiting for Lin to wake up when her phone suddenly rang. Axon picked it up. Hearing Wang's voice, she asked what was going on and he explained. The celebration was moved up and a ride would pick her up tomorrow. Axon worriedly mentioned she did not have an invitation anymore, but Wang reassured her. An invitation is just cheap cardboard anyway. To him, she was their most honored guest. Axon was thrilled by the news, though she still politely apologized for causing any trouble. She gently stroked Rai's head, asking her to look after her daddy tomorrow night. Rai happily agreed to stay with her father, admitting to her mother that she was never afraid when by his side. Soon, the night of the celebration arrived. The grand Binhai celebration had begun. Everything was lavishly decorated. Lin could not understand why Axon looked so deeply troubled during this grand event. In truth, she was terrified for her family, especially after their home was attacked. But her mother rudely snapped that they were just worthless trash who could do nothing right. She insisted Jan focus on finding a rich husband. Suddenly, everyone turned their heads. Axon spotted her grandfather walking in with Yan. Jan held her mother close, whispering how outraged she was by her cousin's behavior. Yan quickly noticed them too. Yan smugly asked how they even got in without an invitation, but Jan snapped back. Jan proudly declared they were Lord Wang's honored guests, and he had personally invited them. The wealthy heir standing next to Yan was completely stunned by Jan's striking beauty. Meanwhile, Yan desperately tried to steal back the spotlight, mocking them with a smug laugh. She flaunted her invitation, telling Jan to go back home where she belonged. But Jan pointed right at Yan, reminding her that the invite actually belonged to Axon. She demanded Yan hand it back, but Yan sneered that only worthy family members deserved it. The young heir next to them glanced at the card and almost choked in shock. It was purple and gold, the legendary colors reserved exclusively for the imperial family. This pass confirmed the rumors that the Giants were close to the Wang family. But out of nowhere, an older gentleman stepped up and snatched the golden card away. He loudly declared it a fake, and though Yan desperately tried to snatch it back, she failed. The stranger smirked, noting her joy was incredibly short-lived, which left Yan absolutely fuming. How dare this random stranger call her highly authentic invitation a cheap forgery? Her grandfather quickly ordered her to watch her tongue, introducing the man as Master Zhou. Jan instantly felt a wave of anxiety, realizing just how incredibly powerful he was. Meanwhile, one of Zhou's relatives openly wondered aloud why worthless trash like the Giants were even allowed inside such an elite, high society gathering in the first place. Hearing that insult, Jan's fear instantly evaporated, replaced by a surge of pure anger. But her grandfather quickly stepped in to stop her, bowing deeply to apologize for the scene. He humbly lowered his head, begging the powerful elder to overlook their family's foolish mistakes. Zhou just gave a cold, smug smile as he watched the old patriarch beg. Then he tossed the card aside, accusing the Giant family of brutally beating up Liu. Zhou warned that he was now taking direct action over the situation with Liu. Jan was totally confused, quickly protesting they had nothing to do with Liu. But then she quickly glanced over at Axon with a sudden, dark suspicion. Deciding to shift the blame, Yan grabbed Axon's arm and pointed an accusing finger. She loudly blamed her for the attack, but Axon quickly shook her head in denial. Axon insisted she was innocent. She did not even know Liu had been beaten up. Liu's father did not believe the girl, demanding she stop pretending and tell the truth. Otherwise, Shin's family would be forced to pack up and leave, gone tomorrow. Their bitter fight was suddenly cut short when Wang made his grand appearance. Right behind him was Lynn with his daughter and king, as Wang glared at them. Wang hated family drama, absolutely despised it, but Rui spotted her mom. The young girl held her father's hand and waved happily, shouting about her mother's surprise. Rui kept cheering about the secret gift, while Zhou glared at the newcomers with pure disgust. He sneered, demanding to know who they were, as Liu's father quickly pointed them out. He explained the cripple in the wheelchair was Shin's husband Lynn, and that girl was their kid. Zhou just laughed. He mocked this pathetic family reunion until he cried. He could not comprehend why a loser was even here, until Lynn suddenly spoke up. Lynn calmly asked what Zhou thought he could do, leaving Shin in absolute shock. Shin could not believe he was awake, while Rui clung to her mother's hand. She had her proof, but Zhou only scoffed at the conscious cripple. He laughed that waking up meant nothing, since Lynn was still stuck in that chair. In response, Lynn simply smirked. He stood up. Terrifying pressure filled the room. Zhou gasped in utter disbelief, before quickly roaring that he would break the man's legs. He wanted payback for what Lynn did to Liu, but now, Lynn was standing tall. Shin could not contain her sheer emotion as tears began streaming down her face. Lynn gently promised her everything would be fine from now on. But suddenly, Yan lunged forward, hitting him and screaming how he dared to wake up. Lynn brushed her off. He left Qing to handle the trash. His subordinate moved instantly. A brutal slap hit her right in the face. Even after getting slapped, Shin's delusional cousin still thought she could threaten them. She kept shouting threats, while Zhou joined in, throwing venomous insults at Lynn. Zhou spat that even if the useless husband had finally opened his eyes, he was nothing. He was still just crippled garbage in their eyes, a sentiment Liu's father fully shared. Lynn just smiled. In 5 minutes, their entire family would fall. They would be completely erased from Bin Hai City, and King stepped up to execute it. Zhou and the head of the Liu family burst out laughing, fully mocking his words. They refused to believe him, but their arrogant joy quickly vanished. The old man's phone rang. It brought devastating news about his company. Their system crashed. Panicked investors pulled their funding instantly. To make things worse, every single major bank flatly refused to give them loans. Now they owed billions, absolute ruin. Lou's father stood frozen in horror. Joe started sweating as well, realizing his own family fortune was tied to them. With no escape, the proud patriarch had to humiliate himself. He literally crawled to beg at Lynn's feet, only to receive a cold, mocking stare. Yet Joe remained stubborn, still believing Lynn was a nobody who did not deserve his respect. He thought he could easily crush Lynn. He was dead wrong. Lynn unleashed a terrifying pressure, asking with a dark smirk if Joe was truly ready. Regret hit Joe instantly. He frantically tried to backpedal out of danger. He squealed that Lynn could not touch an official envoy representing the royal family. He desperately flashed the royal family badge, claiming he was there on their behalf. He claimed he replaced the Supreme Lynn because the master had not recovered in time. Rumors claimed the legendary Supreme Lynn returned to the capital to recover, which didn't sound true to anyone there, but Joe swore he was not telling a single lie. Suddenly, Lynn snatches the royal emblem right out of his shaking hand. Joe starts trembling in pure terror, screaming at him for stealing from royalty. Then Lynn crushes the badge with a flash of blue light, warning that the rumors of the Supreme returning to the capital to recover are completely fake. To the people here, breaking that royal emblem is the ultimate offense against royalty. Yan frantically begs his grandfather to disown Lynn before they all get dragged down. Otherwise, the giant family is done for. That is when young Rui steps in. She cannot stand hearing these cowards insult her father like this. She proudly yells that her dad is no coward and can handle this alone. Furious, Jan raises her hand to strike the child, screaming at her to shut up. But Lynn unleashes a shockwave from his hand, blasting the cruel woman away. He coldly warns her that nobody insults the daughter of the supreme leader. Shin's nasty cousin hits the floor, still whimpering that Lynn is just useless trash. Talk about a massive reality check. She suddenly realizes he just claimed the title. Joe gasps, demanding to know if he is truly the supreme ruler of the South. Right on cue, Ching arrives and hands his master his glorious military uniform. Lynn slips into the coat in seconds, completely transforming before their eyes. He admits his true identity, telling them they can also call him Lin Feng. Shin is completely breathless, realizing her husband was the powerhouse protecting her all along. With a warm smile, Lin looks at her and gently nods. Yan is in absolute disbelief that his cousin landed such an insanely powerful man. The entire crowd stands frozen, unable to process meeting the legendary supreme leader. Suddenly, Dr. Lee storms in, calling everyone blind fools for ignoring the uniform crest. The snobby guests gasp as the royal family's personal doctor suddenly appears. Without hesitation, Dr. Lee drops to his knees, swearing lifelong loyalty to Lin. Lin sighs and tells the old doctor that such intense formalities are unnecessary. But Joe is still in complete denial, refusing to accept the shocking truth. He screams that there is no way this broke loser is the supreme ruler. He claims Lin hired actors, but Dr. Lee has had enough of his mouth. And boom, the old doctor delivers a savage gut punch that folds him instantly. Joe collapses, gasping that an old senior should not be hitting a youth. He desperately threatens the doctor, bragging about his highly influential family connections. But Dr. Lee just gathers glowing energy in his palm, completely unfazed. He vows to crush anyone who dares to back this arrogant fool. With another brutal strike, Joe is sent flying straight out of the building. Now Dr. Lee bows, waiting for his master's next direct command. Lin casually orders Wang to kick out the Zhou, Leiyu, and Jian families. After all, they were never even. Invited, and the banquet will finally begin once they are all cleared out. Jan and her grandfather panic, but she shrieks that Shin must leave too. She demands Shin be kicked out since she belongs to the Jian family, as the old man tries to reason with her. Zhang realizes his brother-in-law is actually the glorious supreme. His mother is filled with shame for treating him so poorly. All this time while the high society guests raised their glasses in toast. The crowd rejoiced, celebrating the Supreme's return. They were finally about to see their legendary hero. With their own eyes, meanwhile, the giant family was kicked right out of the banquet venue. Banquet, Jan kept whining, but her grandfather insisted that it actually made perfect sense. Since Lynn was a famous general before he ended up in that wheelchair. Believe it or not, Jan was convinced that he was only pretending to be the Supreme. She vowed to seduce him, certain that Shin was not a woman worthy of him. Worthy of marrying him. Meanwhile, in the capital, the young emperor, known as the Lord of Dragons, received terrible news. Zhou had been defeated by Qin. Even worse, Lin kicked Zhou out of the banquet and shattered the royal emblem of the royal family. The emperor's eyes burned with absolute fury as he assumed Qin was cutting all ties with the crown to side with Lin. He ordered his men to handle this immediately. Trembling in fear, the servants stammered that they could not even get close to them. The Lord of Dragons roared with rage, unleashing a surge of purple energy that bound the terrified servant. His thunderous voice boomed, declaring that the Zhou family must be allowed to destroy the giant family, giving them full permission to use the #1 weapon against Lin if needed. The servant, barely breathing, gasped out his agreement. The cold emperor sneered. He said he might have spared that useless cripple if he had stayed down, but now he intended to crush him completely. Later, as the banquet wrapped up, Lin returned home with his wife and daughter. Shin's mother whispered to her younger daughter that today had been a massive success. Meanwhile, Rai noticed her mother's sadness despite the festivities and quietly told her father. As they entered, Li proudly showed Zhang the expensive jewelry she received from the nobles, gifts given right after they learned she was the mother-in-law of the Supreme. Zhang gasped when she saw the treasures. Both women shrieked with absolute joy, shouting that they were finally rich. Rich, but watch closely. Amidst the chaos, Shin calmly announced that she and Lin had some important news. The women, totally blinded by the jewelry, paid no attention. Shin asked Rai to head upstairs, explaining that the adults needed a private talk. She promised to come up soon to tuck her in, and Lin promised he would follow soon. Obediently, the sweet little girl went upstairs. With all eyes on Lin, they demanded to know when he finally woke up. Lin explained it happened suddenly, right after seeing their daughter get bullied. Out of nowhere, Shin slapped him across the face. Sobbing bitterly, she cursed him for keeping it secret. Why hide it when so much pain could be avoided? Lin gently caught her hand, explaining he kept it a secret because he feared she might choose that other man. Shin pulled away, letting go of his hands. She bitterly admitted that there was no other choice if she wanted to keep their daughter safe and raise her properly. Instantly, Lin wrapped his arms around her. He whispered that she and Rai were his only family. From now on, absolutely no one would ever dare hurt them again. Softened by his heartfelt words, Shin embraced him tightly. Calm at last, Lin focused on the path ahead. He had to unlock his royal bloodline and find the 3 legendary generals, the White Tiger, Redbird, and Juan, who were now part of. With his plan set, the family sits down for breakfast the following morning. Zhang casually skims the news, asking if her brother-in-law is really the famous Supreme. Lin, considering his face is viral and everyone is whispering about the legendary general, Lin shrugs it off, telling her to believe whatever she wants. Playing nice, Zhang claims she always took care of him. Lin dryly thanks her for the support, knowing full well she is flat-out lying. Suddenly, the front door flies open. Shin's mother Lai storms in furiously, clutching an envelope while Zhang follows closely behind. The angry old woman screams that Lin is a fake Supreme, putting their entire Jan family at risk of losing everything. Shin calmly asks what on earth she means. The old woman slams the envelope down, telling her to check inside. Shin tears it open as Zhang smirks, proudly bragging about her little background check. It turns out Lin is a total nobody, the documents prove that this guy is just an unemployed loser from Nilu village in Binhai City. Shin is completely stunned, yet she refuses to believe her husband is a fraud. Lin looks directly at Jang, demanding with absolute ice in his voice to know her real motive. His arrogant cousin Jang immediately drops the hammer. By their grandfather's orders, she announces a brutal punishment, starting today. They are officially kicked out of the Jan family, and Shin loses her job. To make matters worse, they are ordered to pack up and get out of the house immediately. Lin turns to his daughter and gently asks if she wants to live by the lake. Little Rai nods, her voice trembling slightly. Shin, utterly devastated over losing her job, cannot hide her terror of the uncertain future, but Lin comforts her, promising everything will be just fine. Meanwhile, Lee silently curses her daughter and Lin, labeling them total failures. Ignoring her bitter rants, Lin focuses entirely on keeping his family safe. He dials Ching, giving sharp orders to pick them up right away. Their destination, the exclusive Biksu Lake area. Hearing this, Jang bursts out laughing, mocking him since only the super wealthy can actually afford to live there. She scoffs at his endless lies, but Lin remains completely unfazed. He simply tells Shin to follow him, and she trusts him completely. Jang, sneering, asks if they plan to sleep on the pavement as they pack up. Lin remembers how this home was once their treasured wedding gift. But today, he is more than ready to leave it all behind without looking back. At that exact moment, Ching pulls up. Jang immediately recognizes the elite soldier, and the pieces of the puzzle instantly fall into place. It hits her like a truck. Lin is indeed the legendary Supreme. Desperate to cling to his power, she tries to tag along, dragging Lee. But stubborn Lee refuses, convinced Lin is a fraud. Annoyed, Jang storms off. Sometime later, the family arrives at their mind-blowing new estate. Little Rai's eyes instantly light up with pure childhood wonder. Lin tells Ching to keep a close eye on his daughter's safety. Ching happily complies, showing the excited little girl around their massive property. But noticing Shin's quiet, heavy gaze, Lin asks if she is all right. She softly admits she's terrified this is all just a beautiful dream, as Lin. He gently held her face, assuring her that they would finally be happy. Even without his full strength, he promised to keep her safe. No one, absolutely no one, would ever dare to bully her again. Still, Shin looked completely unsure. Wanting her to smile, Lin spoke up. He suddenly announced that he had bought a seaside village in Binhai. Did she like it? Shin just burst into pure, happy laughter. She teased that people shouldn't know the great Supreme had this side. But this side, Lin softly replied, was strictly for his family. Suddenly, his phone rang. Shin took Rai inside while he answered it. Lin answered immediately, telling the caller that he was on his way. When Shin asked what happened, he explained the military had called. He had to leave immediately, even as little Rai begged him to stay and play. Lin gently told Shin that he would be gone for 2 or 3 days. Deep down, she feared being left behind, but she forced a brave smile. She promised to mind Rai. He kissed her forehead, leaving Ching to guard them. Hours later, the legendary commander arrived directly at the military headquarters. He called out for Long Tao, who rushed forward to embrace him. Long Tao yelled how much he missed him, completely baffling the surrounding soldiers. Who was this guy? Long Tao quickly announced this was Supreme Lin. He was the ultimate authority of the entire Binhai military department. Instantly, every single soldier bowed their head in deep, silent respect. Long Tao explained he had temporarily filled the Supreme Commander role. But now he wanted to return the leadership and fully retire. Lin frowned. Did he really want to retire after becoming a major general? Long Tao sighed. The entire command structure had drastically changed. The royal family had successfully seized almost every key position of power. He was just glad Lin was back to bring order to this chaos. Lin knew more royal parasites would soon try to infiltrate. Noticing his dark expression, Long Tao asked if he truly expected that. Lynn simply asked, "Is that not the exact reason you called me?" Long Tao admitted it, laughing that excitement made him almost forget. He quickly pulled out several classified files and handed them over. These files detailed the major rotations of the national military commanders. They recorded every single change since the day Lynn was incapacitated. They also contained highly critical updates on the active border war. Lynn reviewed the papers, noting that nothing disastrous should have happened. But Long Tao immediately countered that was the exact problem. Pampered royals, they had absolutely no idea how to lead troops. They only cared about demanding respect, completely failing to lead their men. While the South remained safe, 10 northwestern cities were being bombed. All communications were blocked, and they had received no messenger updates. Lin narrowed his eyes, asking if the White Tiger was stationed there. Long Tao confirmed it, noting they had heard nothing for 5 months. With tense fingers, the Supreme opened the final secret dispatch. The message from the White Tiger contained a truth no one expected. The Northwest region had fallen. He doubted he could survive this. His final request, do not mourn him if he dies. Hearing this, pure rage boiled within Lin at the thought of losing him. But Long warned him, the military chief was the Dragon Lord. So why was the entire royal family suddenly claiming total control over them? Lin had doubts. He sent someone to investigate the capital. In his mind, he knew Shannon was ready to sacrifice the entire nation. Just for his own gains, 2 days passed. Meanwhile at Jian, Shin's grandfather sat in deep thought, regretting his choice to fire his granddaughter. He felt unsure, but Yan, busy with her lipstick, laughed. She claimed Lin was a fraud and Shin was useless. Still, the old man hesitated. Ever since her departure, every partner withdrew. They lost all capital, leaving the Jian family completely broke. Yan acted innocent, claiming everything would work out just fine. The old man snapped, slamming his hand down and yelling in absolute fury. Nothing is fine, all our partners have joined Lin instead. Panicked, Yan blamed her cousin, saying this was all because of Shin. If only she had not run the finance department. The grandfather sighed, hurry up, we must go see the patriarch. Before he died, he left a secret letter to be opened. Only in extreme desperation, he believed this letter would save them. It was their last card. Later that night, our hero arrived back home. He flicked on the lights, waking his wife on the couch. Shin stirred, asking softly if he was back. Lin smiled very gently. He draped his coat over her shoulders, asking why she stayed up. She was waiting for him, so relieved to see him home safe. She headed to the bedroom, advising him to get some sleep too. Suddenly, Ching appeared at the window. Any updates, Lin asked her. She had 3 reports. First, since Shin was fired, partners cut ties completely, bringing the family business to the brink of total bankruptcy. Second, the Dragon Master was arrested. His power was stripped and given to an unknown rival. Third, news of the White Tiger messenger. 5 months ago, he was at the northwest frontier, specifically. In the Masterless Kingdom, Lin's face went cold. He recognized that place. Ching confirmed it was in ruins. Lin nodded, saying that was all he needed to know. The dark truth confirmed his fears. A storm of endless chaos was coming to the Empire. The next morning, our hero prepared a massive and delicious breakfast feast. The rich aroma woke the family. His sister-in-law, Jiang, was shocked to see such a beautiful table prepared by her brother-in-law. Lin explained this meal was especially for Ray and Shin. Soon his wife appeared, looking exhausted. He quickly pulled out a chair. He teased her about staying up late to wait for him. Shin admitted she spent the night thinking about finding a new job. Suddenly, Lee's sharp voice cut through their peaceful family morning. The air grew cold. She snapped that it was time Lin paid for his stay. For 2 years, he was helpless, and now his mother-in-law wanted her recompense. She demanded cash, blaming him entirely for their family falling apart after his awakening. Shin stepped in immediately to defend her husband, begging her mother to stop. But the older woman refused to back down, spitting insults at Lynn instead. Mortified, Shin apologized to her husband, whispering that her mother only saw money. Lynn just laughed softly, admitting his mother-in-law was not entirely wrong. He really did need to bring home some cash. Then he asked how Shin's father had died. Shin sighed and answered that her father had passed away in a car accident. Desperate for the real truth, Lin turned his gaze to Jang for answers. Jang admitted she was in the dark, though she suspected Yan of foul play. They probably framed him because great-grandfather chose her father as the sole successor. The greedy relatives were absolutely livid, and the entire Giant family fractured. Once he died, Shin's household was completely cut off from the inheritance. Young Ray yelled in anger, demanding they take back what belonged to her grandfather. Jang snapped back in irritation, telling the little girl to stay out of adult matters. But Ray suddenly pulled out an old necklace her grandfather had once given her. He wanted her to have it. Lin took the piece, his eyes widening. He recognized the heavy energy right away. These were legendary evolutionary stones. Shin frowned, remembering seeing this exact pendant in her father's old study. Lin knew this was no simple jewelry. The royal bloodline held incredible secrets. Their dormant traits required a rare catalyst and a hidden, ancient technique to awaken. Suddenly, a searing blue light erupted from the stone, wrapping tightly around Lin's hand. Captivated by the glow, little Ray reached out and snatched the gem from him. Lin could not stop her in time. The bright aura completely swallowed the child. Her parents cried out in terror as the light sank into her stomach and vanished. Ray stumbled, then stood right back up, murmuring that something felt warm inside her belly. Shin panicked, but Lin explained the stone had been triggered. He started the process, but the artifact chose Ray instead. Her power was waking up. Her bloodline ability was fully awakening. They had no other option. They needed help. He dialed Dr. Lee immediately. The doctor picked up, sensing the heavy urgency. Before Lin could speak, the phone yanked itself free and began to float. Metal forks and knives around the kitchen rose into the air, spinning wildly. An unseen force controlled the room. Ray's dormant power was finally unleashed. Meanwhile, Jang was peacefully relaxing on the beach, unaware of the crisis. Her quiet moment shattered when blood-curdling screams echoed from the nearby villa. Lin burst through the doors, cradling a shivering Ray. Shin followed close behind, screaming. Shin screamed to run, but Jang stood there frozen in total confusion. Shin fled. A massive, terrifying shadow suddenly blocked out the sun. Looking up, Jang gasped. A monstrous wave was towering high above them. The wall of water slammed down, sweeping both sisters off their feet. Shin screamed for her to move, but Jang stared at the sea, paralyzed by fear. She truly believed a sea monster army was invading. Shin grabbed her, running. Later, Dr. Lee met with Lin and asked if he really wanted to seal her power. To seal her bloodline, Lin knew Ray's true ability was far too dangerous. Electromagnetic power, a force so incredibly rare that people only heard of it in royal legends. He refused to risk his daughter, meaning his plan had to go forward. He asked if the 10 miles of coastline were completely cleared. Ching confirmed it, and Lin ordered her to get ready. The team boarded the boat and quickly began preparations. Dr. Lee then started acupuncture on Lin, warning him that 9 prohibition levels had to be unlocked. From bottom to top, Lin braced himself, knowing exactly what to do as each needle was inserted. When Dr. Lee reached specific meridians, he drew something from Lin's back, causing him to scream out in agony. Despite the intense pain he forced himself to endure, so far he had unlocked 5 layers. Dr. Lee kept using this agonizing method because the hero still had to break through 4 more. Rai watched with tears in her eyes, deeply worried about her father as she witnessed how much he was suffering, but this brutal process was far from over. As night Fell in the sky grew dark, a stranger watched the boat from the water. This figure was not alone. Pulling a blade from his clothes, he warned his squad that it was time to strike. Suddenly, he was caught completely off guard by an unexpected apparition. Lynn glared furiously at the intruder. The enemy tried desperately to contact his master, but before he could speak a single word, a bolt of lightning struck him down, electrocuting him instantly. Lynn immediately turned to Ching, harshly scolding her for failing to watch the sea, since she had claimed there were no enemies lurking. Ching bowed her head in shame, apologizing deeply for her failure. By the next day, the Supreme returned home to tend to his wife. Shin was burning up with a fever, so he let her rest in bed. Shortly after, Lynn told long they needed to talk. Shin stirred, murmuring a few weak words, and he quickly leaned in, asking if she was all right. The first thing Shin asked was about their daughter. Lynn gently reassured her that Rai was safe with Dr. Lee. Meanwhile, in another room, Dr. Lee tried to get Rai to describe how she was feeling. The girl paused for a moment before admitting she did not know. She would have to ask her father. Right then, Lynn entered, carrying Shin in his arms, asking what was going on. Rai instantly rushed into her mother's warm embrace, happy to see she was awake. The Supreme gently took his daughter, telling her to let her mother rest for a bit. Dr. Lee then warned the Supreme that he must take the girl with him. Shin instantly grew anxious and demanded to know why, and who wouldn't. Explained calmly that Rai had awakened the raw power of the royal bloodline and needed proper guidance. Nobody was better suited for that task than Dr. Lee. The doctor joined the conversation, explaining to Shin that a brutal conflict was raging in the northwest, but the royal family was covering it up, creating a total illusion of peace. He added that Rai's awakening was unexpected and that the man currently controlling the capital was their mortal enemy. Therefore, Shin and their daughter would become the Supreme's vulnerability if they could not defend themselves. Even after hearing this, Shin hesitated to let her little princess leave. She insisted Rai stay home, but Dr. Lee patiently convinced her, explaining he would only train the girl for a single year. He promised to teach her everything he knew, swearing on his life that she would not be harmed. The Supreme left the decision completely in his daughter's hands, promising not to force her. Rai, picturing the incredibly powerful enemies her father would face, feared he might refuse to ever end up helpless again. Determined to get strong enough to protect him, she made her choice to leave with Dr. Lei. He praised her courage, urging them to hurry. Before departing, Rai handed an agenda to her father, asking him to keep it safe until they met again. She quietly admitted that their time together had been far too short. Since his awakening, Lynn looked down with a heavy heart, apologizing for not being around more. Eager to leave, Rai quickly pulled the doctor along, promising she would return. Shin did not even have the time to say goodbye before her daughter dashed away. Standing outside, Rai swore to herself that she would protect them. Indoors, Lynn promised his worried wife that their daughter would be perfectly fine. Shin, still anxious, asked if he would leave them too. Lynn nodded, sharing news from his scouts in the northwest, but promised to settle everything before heading out. The next day at the Jin family estate, Shin asked in surprise why they had come. Lynn assured her that everything would soon make sense. Just then, Shin's grandfather and cousin walked up. The grim old man demanded to know why they were here. Lynn grabbed an envelope from Ching's hand and tossed it over, telling him to read. The papers contained explosive evidence his scouts had gathered just that morning. As they scanned the pages, the old man and his granddaughter grew pale. Lynn turned to Shin and revealed the shocking truth. Her father's car crash was no accident. Talk about a cold-blooded betrayal. The mastermind was Yan. The cousin shrieked, pointing a finger at Lynn and accusing him of framing her. Furious, the old man slapped his granddaughter across the face, utterly admitting he had been blind to her schemes. Shin stood there, completely shocked. Yan desperately tried to defend herself, screaming that she never killed their Uncle, she tried to justify her actions, claiming she only wanted to warn them that the Jin family belonged to her and her father. She never imagined they were dealing with absolute monsters. She added that was just unlucky, those beasts tore him apart, so it was not her fault. Lynn immediately caught the hidden meaning behind her words, suspecting others were involved in the plot. Meanwhile, Shin, deeply confused, demanded that her cousin explain exactly what she meant. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the shadows, warning its master that Lynn had spotted them. Lynn laughed coldly, mockingly remarking that the Jin family might have grown, but they were hiding rats in their home. At lightning speed, Ching dashed toward the shadow so fast no one could follow. The old man desperately begged Lynn for mercy. Lynn calmly replied that he only wanted to see which rats were hiding. Seconds later, Ching burst into a secret chamber and tackled a blue-haired spy. The intruder sneered, claiming his mission was done and she could never hold him. He tried to break free, triggering a fierce clash, but Ching easily subdued him and dragged him back, throwing him at her master's feet, and just when you think it is over, his body begins to undergo a terrifying transformation, sprouting horns right before Lynn. He recognized it instantly, a mutated beast from the royal bloodline. Yan pointed at the creature, screaming that this was the very monster that murdered her third uncle. Lynn stepped right in front of Shin, shielding her while leaving the fight to Ching. His loyal subordinate materialized, a glowing dagger in her hand. The mutant snarled that he would crush her first and then finish off Lynn. With flaming claws, the beast lunged at Ching, but she moved with deadly precision. In an instant, her dagger slashed across his neck. The mutant collapsed, choking on his own blood. Yan watched in absolute shock, unable to comprehend how anyone could slay such a massive beast with one strike. As the enemy fell lifeless, Ching noticed something hidden in his pocket. She picked the object up and handed it to Lynn, who examined the small device, immediately recognizing it as a communication transmitter. Suddenly, a voice came through. It was Joe on the line, demanding to know who was listening. Lynn's anger flared. He had spared him at the banquet, but now his patience had run out. The old man of the giant family paled, terrified that the protagonist would confront Joe, whose family held massive power. He begged Lynn to remember that Master Jiang had saved his life once. Lynn replied coldly that when Master Jiang saved him, he swore to protect the giant family for 30 years, but that vow ended the second they insulted his wife. The bearded old man desperately argued that one day Yixin would inherit the family, begging him to reconsider. Yan, absolutely furious, screamed at her grandfather that this family belonged to her and her father, ignoring the chaos. Lin turned to his wife, asking her to decide. Without hesitation, Shin said she refused to go back. Her grandfather stood completely stunned by her cold response. After everything, she had zero desire to live with them after being cast out. Respecting her choice to leave it all behind, the protagonist took her hand and led her out of the house, ignoring the old man crying out for her to stop. Lin firmly stated that he owed Master Jiang nothing anymore. He would handle the Zhou family himself, meaning from this exact moment on, there was no debt left between him and the ungrateful giant family. Talk about a clean break. Outside, Yan fumed over how everything had unfolded, their faces twisting with pure rage. Walking away, Lin told his wife he would head to the capital for 2 days to handle some business, leaving Qing behind to protect her. Shin felt bad for giving her husband so much trouble, but the loyal subordinate reassured her that he was simply tying up some loose ends. Curious, Shin asked about this powerful figure in the capital that Lin kept mentioning. Qing answered that it was Shen Yan, the most dominant figure of the royal family ruling the capital. Shin had never heard that name, yet it gave her an incredibly chilling feeling. Qing advised Shin to get in the car and head home while Lin handled his business. A few hours later, at the Zhou family mansion, the patriarch discussed their ongoing investigation. complaining there. Was still absolutely no word on Lynn or the giant family, a man in a green hat. Replied that the young emperor was growing highly impatient, while their family still had backing today. They would be tossed aside if they proved useless. Head of the Zhou family nodded in quiet agreement. After all, his own son had been humiliated by that single warrior. The green-headed advisor suggested they strike while Lin was still weak, finishing him off in one clean blow. Suddenly, a loud crash. Lin walked in, dragging Zhou by his hair. His cold eyes scanned the room, searching for the boss. The man in the green hat stepped forward, demanding to know who dared break into their home. Trembling, Zhou screamed to his grandfather that this was Lin. The old man burst into hysterical laughter, mocking the warrior for walking straight into his trap. Lin saved them the trouble of hunting him down. Slamming his cane, the old man triggered a mechanism that dropped a giant cage onto Lin. He sneered, demanding he surrender the Yan family and give up his royal lineage if he wanted to live like a dog. Otherwise, he would not leave alive, and his head would go to the young Emperor. Zhou's dad begged the old man to wait. His son was trapped too. Zhou screamed for help. Finally, Lin let go of the boy. With a cold smile, "I hate being locked up with dogs," he said. "Last time that happened, my enemy ended up dead." Zhou shrieked for his father. The grandfather warned Lin he was finished if he resisted, proving he cared nothing for his grandson. Clicking a button on his cane, he sent lightning into the cage. Zhou was electrocuted, screaming in pure agony, but Lin stood completely unharmed by the shock. Zhou's father begged him to stop, but the old patriarch replied coldly, grandson or not, they would be rewarded by the young master once Lin was dead. Smirking, Lin asked if Shen Yan had already become an emperor. It seemed strange that the Zhou family was so loyal when Shen Yan never warned them these tricks were useless. Now watch. Lin grabbed the bars and ripped the cage apart bare hands. The old man stumbled back, shouting in shock. He had never seen such power. Screaming for backup, he summoned dozens of soldiers safe behind his army. He ordered them to destroy Lin. Bullets flew, but they bounced harmlessly off his shield. Shield intact, he charged, taking down the snipers with his bare hands. A second wave fired armor-piercing arrows. Lin caught one midair. Absolutely unreal. The patriarch boasted these were special weapons. Design built to counter the royal family, now repurposed to serve the young emperor. The soldiers intensified their assault, firing more ammo while igniting the gasoline behind Lin. A massive explosion consumed the area. Convinced of victory, the old man bragged that even if his mansion was gone, the threat was eliminated. His joy was short-lived. Out of the flames, Lin emerged untouched, moving like a phantom. With one swift strike, he took the old man's head. The patriarch collapsed lifeless to the floor. Only Zhou's father survived. Desperate, he screamed for their ultimate weapon. Suddenly, two monstrous figures entered. The father reminded them that Master Shen had ordered the extermination of the Yan family. If they failed, they too would be executed. Lin immediately recognized them as mutants who had having absorbed fragments of the royal bloodline. They attacked together, swarming him with sheer numbers, but Lin is way faster. He drives a brutal fist straight into the blue-skinned monster's face. It crashes hard against the wall while the red demon tries a sneak attack. He blocks it easily, tossing the beast aside like a ragdoll. Their mutations make them fast, but they cannot touch the Supreme. He is curious about their strange mutation, but has no time to waste. Drawing a gun from his briefcase, he fires off precise, lethal shots. Shredding their defenses, the hero detonates a hidden explosive to end this. Fire consumes the entire room, turning the mutated monsters to ash instantly. Elsewhere, Zhou's panicked father rushes to his office to report the situation. On the massive screen, Shen Yan appears and demands an immediate update. Terrified, the man stammers that Lin is already at their main estate. He warns that weapon number 1 has already been deployed to crush the intruder. Shen demands to speak with the patriarch. The boss freezes in panic. He cannot admit his father is dead, so he spins a desperate lie, claiming he is still fighting, but Shen sees through the obvious deception. Suddenly, a hand pierces the man's shoulder as crackling lightning erupts. The high-voltage energy vaporizes his body. Lynn has finally cornered his target. Shen laughs through the screen. Of course, the Supreme would invade this family alone and even dismantle their ultimate weapons. Lynn agrees the armor-piercing bullets can hurt the royal bloodline, but he mocks the Dragon Lord. He points out that the weapon and containment method must be used together. Useless armor. In his mind, Shen curses the incompetent Zhou family. Lin taps his temple, mockingly suggesting that Shen needs actual brains. The Dragon Lord calmly counters, boasting that the royal family is his puppet. He claims the only reason Lin is even breathing right now is because he still holds a shred of reputation among the common people. Shen offers him a single choice: submit and witness true supreme power. Lin retorts that Shen slaughtered his own royal family for glory. It is completely pathetic. Shen laughs it off, calling him incredibly naive. Sacrifice is necessary for power. Suddenly, a countdown flashes on screen. Talk about bad timing. A self-destruct bomb was left behind. Shen gloats that with his artifact gone, Lin has lost. Too late, a massive explosion completely vaporizes the entire mansion. It is gone. Back home, Shin wakes with a gasp. Dread, she frantically dials her husband's number to check on him. No signal. Ching rushes inside, hearing her panicked breathing. Is she okay? Shin admits she is absolutely terrified right now. A nightmare about Lin. The loyal subordinate tries to calm her. Master is fine, but Ching offers to use the emergency line. Shin hesitates. A call right now might break his focus in battle. If he is fighting for his life, she cannot distract him. She decides against calling and tells Ching to go back to sleep. Ching nods and leaves, while Shin lies down, trying to rest. He felt sure Shin would be okay, but the next day she ended up hospitalized in Banhai Center. She had fallen terribly sick the night before, and Lin rushed over to see her. He immediately demanded answers from the doctor, who tried to reassure him that she was fine. The tests showed nothing serious, pointing to extreme exhaustion, so she just needed some rest. But Lin knew something was off and pressed the doctor if there was anything else. The doctor hesitated, admitting he actually found something quite strange during the exam. He detected an abnormal electrical discharge in her brain while she slept. Passing the medical report to Lin, the doctor explained the nature of this strange brain activity. It resembled a severe shock or psychiatric disorder, likely triggered by a horrific nightmare. The recent traumatic events probably caused it, but the doctor promised to monitor her closely. He wanted to handle this calmly. Outside, a riot was brewing. Angry crowds screamed in the streets, demanding to let the Chinese head of state speak. Lin watched the chaos unfold. His expression grew cold. Suddenly, Ching burst into the room, absolutely desperate to deliver a message. The situation in the Northwest was completely out of the royal family control. The internet was already flooded with leaked reports of the devastating battle. Lin finally realized why the angry citizens were shouting out in the streets. He urgently asked if the northern and western military units had made a move. Ching replied that their informant discovered active spies in both military branches. Shenyun was utterly overwhelmed, which allowed their secret contract to be exposed. The fragile agreement was shattered, laying the ugly truth bare for all of China. Ching added that global petitions were demanding the general take over as commander. She looked at him anxiously, wanting to know what Lin would do next. Lin knew the public wanted the Binhai commander expelled right now. The citizens hated his close ties to the untrustworthy royal family. Everyone is chanting for Lin to step up and take command, talk about intense pressure. Weighing this heavy decision, he ordered Ching to keep securing the area in his absence. Meanwhile, over at the army headquarters, an angry Long sat in his office. He snapped when someone walked in without knocking, but relaxed seeing it was Lynn. Lynn playfully scolded him for sleeping on the job while the country was burning.